Welcome to this meeting of Assembly Committee on Education for the 2023 legislative session. Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Assemblywoman Anderson.
Present.
Assemblyman De Silva.
Here.
Assemblywoman Hanson.
Here.
Assemblywoman Hardy.
Here.
Assemblyman Koenig.
Here.
Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch.
Here.
Assemblyman MacArthur.
Here.
Assemblywoman Mosca.
Here.
Assemblywoman Taylor.
Present.
Assemblywoman Thomas.
Here.
Assemblywoman Torres.
Here.
Chair Bilbray Axelrod.
I am here, and we have a quorum. Welcome to everyone in the audience and in the overflow room, those of you in Las Vegas and watching over the internet. Reminder to please silence your electronic devices. So they're not anything that makes noise, please. If you wish to testify, please sign in at the table by the door and provide a business card to the committee secretary. When testifying, please turn on your microphone, clearly state your name for the record, any affiliation, then turn on your microphone each time you're done speaking. We do ask that you provide hard copies of anything that you have to hand out for the public. An electronic copy should have been submitted to our committee manager by 1:30 p.m. yesterday. We expect courtesy and respect in our interactions. We don't always agree with each other, but that doesn't mean we can't be nice. Committee members will be using their laptops to view handouts and other documents. Please don't view this as a sign of disrespect or inattention. Finally, we will be limiting bill testimony to 20-minute windows. We'll take 20 minutes of support, followed by 20 minutes of opposition and 20 minutes of neutral. With that, let's get started. We are going to have two bill hearings today. We'll begin with the hearing on Assembly Bill 330, and then we will hear AB 274. We'll also do a BDR introduction. I'll now open the hearing on AB 330. This measure revises provisions governing education. To present this measure, we are honored to have Governor Lombardo, and you have two co-presenters. So please go ahead when you're ready, and welcome to the Education Committee.
Well, for the record, Governor Joe Lombardo. Good afternoon, everyone. Chair Bilbray Axelrod, Vice Chair Taylor, and the Assembly Committee on Education, thank you for having me today. I'm here today to speak about the Safer and Supportive Schools Act, our legislation that addresses school violence, an issue that is top of mind for so many Nevada families, teachers, and students. I know that you are familiar with this topic since Vice Chair Taylor and Assemblywoman Hanson have recently introduced legislation on this critical issue. Over the last 2 years, we have seen countless instances of school violence across Nevada. Throughout my 35 years in law enforcement and 8 years as the sheriff of Clark County, I relied on data to understand crime and to keep our community safe. Similarly, I believe we can look at our school violence data to better understand just how pressing and prevalent it has become in our state. Last year, there were over 6,800 violent incidents reported at CCSD schools within a 7-month period from August 21 to February of 22. There are 350 schools in Las Vegas, and 320 of those schools reported at least one violent incident last year. That means over 90% of the schools within CCSD have reported a violent incident in the last year alone. Since 2019, there has been a 46% increase in violence and sexual assaults reported within the Clark County School District, but the increase in school violence is not just limited to Clark County. In Washoe County, there have been over 7,400 violent incidents reported within the Washoe County School District in the 22-23 school year. Just 2 weeks ago, there was a fight at Worcester High School in Reno that injured a police officer and 7 students and resulted in 2 hospitalizations. By looking at the data, we know that the increase in school violence is not an isolated issue. It's a statewide issue. We know that tens of thousands of students, families, and teachers have been affected. Like I said, in my State of the State address, I believe that AB 168 while well-intended, has led to this increase in dangerous situations in schools across the state. It handcuffs teachers and administrators, leaving them powerless to address habitually misbehaving and violent students. The data is clear. We don't need any more victims of school violence. And for clarification, I have citations for all the data I just provided to you, and I'll provide it to the committee if requested. To take action, my office submitted AB 330, the Safer and Supportive Schools Act. This bill was developed in conjunction with education stakeholders from across the state, including superintendents, teachers, support staff, and administration representatives. Furthermore, the Safer and Supportive Schools Act has the support of all 17 superintendents in Nevada, the Clark County Education Association, and the Clark County Association of School Administrators, along with key community leaders from across the state. I believe this bill has wide-reaching support because educators, administrators, and community leaders alike see the need for reform in our schools. Just as diverse education stakeholders have come together in support of this bill, I believe we can all put our party differences aside to support AB 330. The heart of AB 330 is focused on three main objectives. First, giving teachers the ability to control their own classroom and do their jobs. Second, giving parents peace of mind that their children are safe at school. And third, giving students a safe and supportive environment that's needed to learn. We believe that there should be zero tolerance for school violence. AB 330 institutes serious reforms to empower teachers and schools to discipline students effectively. While AB 330 delivers serious reforms, there is also significant accountability measures built into the legislation. Every child should be given the opportunity to stay in school, but violent students will not be tolerated. To ensure that this legislation is executed properly, suspensions and expulsions will be monitored, and teachers who are excessively removing students from the classroom will be identified. The Act also increases accountability by allowing intervention by both the state and district superintendents where necessary. Every child should be given the opportunity to stay in school, and the accountability measures in this bill will help just do that. It's important to me that you hear directly from the teachers and administrators who encounter school violence regularly. That's why I'm here today with Denise Paul, principal of Whitehead Elementary School here in Sparks, and Freeman Holbrook, principal of McQueen High School here in Reno today. They are here today to share with you how their schools, their teachers, and their students have been impacted by school violence. Like so many others, they believe that AB 330 will help bring safety, security back to our schools. I'm grateful for Principal Paul and Principal Holbrook for sharing their stories with you today. I will now turn it over to them to speak before I share my final thoughts. Principal Paul.
Good afternoon. Chair Bilbray, Axelrod, and members of the committee. Oh, sorry. Thank you. My name is Denise Abijaber Paul, and I am the principal at Jerry Whitehead Elementary School in Sparks. I would like to thank Governor Lombardo for bringing this important bill forward and thank the committee members for their time and consideration. I am here today to represent Washoe County School District's elementary school principals in support of the Safer and Supportive Schools Act. I support this act for two reasons. First, because I am confident this bill will ensure that students who exhibit violent behaviors in school receive the non-punitive interventions and supports they need to be able to function successfully in a school environment and achieve their highest potential as learners. The second reason I support this bill is because it ensures that all students, and especially minority students, like myself at one point, have access to an academically sound and safe environment where they can shine, grow, and are guaranteed that through perseverance and hard work, they can achieve their hopes and dreams. As a classroom teacher for over 20 years, I had the privilege to serve at 3 Title I schools in Washoe County School District. At each of these schools, every year, my classroom, on the first day of school, was filled with eager learners who were excited to be in school and to learn. However, this sense of joy and desire for knowledge would often demolish and become compromised by the behavior of 1 or 2 students. Students who lack the strategies to cope with personal experiences beyond my or any school staff control. The violent outbursts of throwing chairs, desks, staples, while screaming profanity would become a daily occurrence, transforming my safe classroom into a mentally and emotionally harmful and physically dangerous environment where the same students who started the year so excited about learning now hate school and are reluctant to engage. Today, as a standalone school principal, I find myself spending most of my time addressing violent and disruptive behaviors. This means less time to engage in positive interactions with students, such as being present in the lunchroom during lunches or on the playground during recesses. Also, this means less time for visiting classrooms, engaging in the learning and the instructional process, and providing valuable feedback to teachers. Just last Friday, I spent 4 hours of my day managing the behavior of a student who became angry for being asked to stop listening to music on a laptop and go to lunch. The student became so angry, he broke his headphones into tiny pieces after violently throwing them at me and missing me by a hair. When in my office, the student angrily swept everything on my conference table onto the floor while calling me names and blaming me for his rage. No principal, teacher, school counselor, or school staff want to find themselves in these situations. It is so hard to watch students self-destruct and experience emotional pain. What is even harder is to know that there is nothing you can do to help them. Students who behave this way need beyond what a principal, a school counselor, classroom teacher, or school staff can offer. They need individualized, systematic social and emotional interventions. They must develop the coping strategies they need to function in a school environment and build healthy relationships with peers while positively engaging in the learning. We have a duty to all students. I repeat, all students. We have a duty to provide a safe learning environment where everyone can succeed. I believe everyone present here today shares this view. So I hope we can all listen to understand, because when we do that, we will find that we all want what is best for all students. Thank you.
At this time, Principal Holbrook would like to address the committee. There you go.
Good afternoon, members of the Assembly Committee on Education. My name is Freeman Holbrook, and I'm the proud principal of McQueen High School in Reno. But today I speak to you as the president of the Washoe School Principals Association, where I represent 97% of the administrators in Washoe County. I'm here to speak in support of AB 330, and I felt it was vital to share with the committee how this bill looks in practice and how important it is to see this through. As site administrators, we are the only entity who will work with the student, the family, and staff members through the entire behavior cycle after an event takes place inside or outside of the classroom. With the training and freedom to properly respond to negative behaviors, administrators can properly support our staff while approaching individual student needs with a holistic lens. I want to share a very brief and real story with you. Student A has a very defined learning disability in math. The student does not have any other known disabilities, including social or behavioral. One day in English, student A gets upset at a grade and begins to scream at the teacher. As the teacher is trying to calm the situation down, student A begins to yell profanities and threaten the teacher while walking in their direction. The teacher goes to the phone to call the office for help while student B, who has no known current disabilities, stands up to assist. Student A and student B, who was protecting the teacher, end up in a physical altercation where student B goes to the hospital. Due to the current expectations within the law, student A returns to the same classroom within 24 hours, and student B is suspended for 3 days. Student A returns with no closure with the teacher because the restorative reentry plan that needed to be completed so quickly did not have all the necessary team members present to include the teacher. Student B returned 72 hours later to the classroom with no closure as well, and now this classroom will never be the same. That is not good for a single student in the classroom to include student A or student B. One of the most important facts about this story is that it has happened to student A 3 times in 2 years. But we have not created an environment that assists the student in making different choices. We have rewarded the behavior with more undefined support and zero accountability. These are extreme situations that are becoming more common because we are not interrupting the behavior cycle. Right now, we are suspending students inequitably for consequences instead of accountability. Suspensions should be designed to promote a safe school environment for all students and allow time for some very important things to happen. Number 1, for the school to properly investigate the incident. Number 2, allow time for all parties to discuss with families and staff the plan moving forward. Number 3, plan and hold meetings with all necessary people that put students first and discuss safety expectations moving forward. And number 4, allow time for the school to properly create a restorative reentry plan for all students involved. AB 330 allows for administrators to utilize best practices from start to finish while putting plans into place that will build relationships and provide students the skills to break the cycle. That being said, in very rare instances, we will have students who will not respond to any measures we can provide in a comprehensive setting. It is not fair to keep putting them back into that setting as it promotes the opposite effect and students begin to disconnect from all schools. AB 330 allows for a setting decision in real time where some students will be able to first focus on behavior and social needs with a second focus on academics. We want our comprehensive public schools full and we want our students safe, but we are doing a disservice to all students and families if we do not provide an avenue for the students who must put their mental health and social and emotional well-being ahead of academics. I always tell my staff at McQueen we must prioritize student attendance, mental health, behaviors, and then academics in that order. AB 330 does this in practice by encompassing both the proactive and reactive approaches necessary to provide students and the skills to continuously make sound, positive decisions. Thank you.
Thank you both for sharing. In closing, I'll say this. We can all agree that fundamentally all students and all teachers deserve to feel safe at school. On behalf of tens of thousands of concerned parents, teachers, students, and administrators, I ask you to give AB 330 your complete consideration. It is my hope that we can move this bill through the legislature to my desk efficiently so that we can bring safety and security back to our schools as soon as possible. I know many others have gathered here in Las Vegas today to share their experiences with school violence. So speaking next in Las Vegas will be John Velardita of the Clark County Education Association, followed in Carson City by Jeff Horn of the Clark County Association of School Administrators, Mary Przinski of the Nevada Association of Superintendents, and Carson City Superintendent A.J. Fueling. State Superintendent Joan Ebert will follow the speakers to speak on my behalf in furtherance of this bill. I want to thank each and every one of you for your time, and I appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. So I see Mr. Velardita down in Las Vegas, so it is your wish that he would testify on this bill first, and then we'll have Superintendent Ebert and Ms. McGill come up to answer questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you. Superintendent, do you want to go ahead and come up now? And then we'll go to Las Vegas to hear from Mr. Velardita, and then I'll open it up for questions from the committee.
Madam Chair, thank you. There were 3 people here in Carson that the governor would like to have speak before we present the bill as well. That was with your permission. Jeff Horn, Mary Brzezinski and Superintendent AJ.
Thank you. I know the governor had said, but before I had them down as support testimony, but we can do that. Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Velardita.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, my name is John Velardita, and I represent the Clark County Education Association. We represent 18,000 licensed professionals in Clark County. I'm here to speak in support of and grateful that the governor has proposed AB 330. We know that this bill is long overdue. We also know that on the Assembly Education Committee, there's also proponents of other legislation, Assemblywoman Taylor and Assemblywoman Hanson. And we look at this as a very good development. I think at this point in the game, there's a recognition that our schools and the climate in these schools has gotten out of hand with student behavior for a lot of different reasons. And it's a complex problem that requires multiple solutions. But one of the most immediate solutions that we need is intervention in real time. The culture in these schools has gotten out of hand in terms of student behavior. And what we have seen is an escalation of violence. And it's not just in Clark County. Every day, practically, when we read the news nationwide, we hear of another story. Yesterday in Colorado, for example. This is dangerous. We do not want to see Clark County School District become a national narrative with a tragedy in the making. The number of firearms, the number of violent behavior that's escalating indicates something is about to happen. AB 330 empowers educators on the front line, as well as principals, to take immediate action where they see a very serious threat. And we applaud that. But we also know that this issue is going to require a compromise, that both parties, and the executive branch and the legislative branch, is going to have to come up with a solution. Our expectation out of this session is that there will be a bill that will be passed, that there will be legislation that in these schools will set a different tone, a different culture. I just want to share a moment with you. Last year in El Dorado High School, a teacher was brutally raped and assaulted by a student, a young student. And this teacher was held hostage and tied up and left alone after the assault for quite some time. After that incident, we organized a meeting in that building with all the staff, and we invited a number of legislators to attend that meeting because we wanted legislators to hear directly in real time from the front line what was going on in these schools, these classrooms, campuses, and buses. And it wasn't a moment to talk about that brutal incident that occurred in El Dorado, but it was also all the other unreported incidents that educators and students were facing with this escalation in violence. And the whole purpose of having that moment was to try to bring legislators in real time, like I said, to the front line to see what the conditions are in these schools. That teacher is never going to teach again. She was a young teacher that came in wanting to change the world, and today she's not at work and she's been traumatized. She's also a CCA member and really loved her students. And in fact, the student that assaulted her, she was unaware that it would lead to what happened. So we're here today because we applaud the governor for his bill that he's introduced, but we also know that Assemblywoman Taylor and others also want to tackle this issue, and we encourage both parties the executive branch and the legislative branch to come to some kind of terms where we can pass legislation and we can then roll out into these schools statewide a policy that essentially says it's not acceptable for students to engage in violent behavior on other students as well as other staff. So we appreciate the governor, and we're here in support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we'll come up to Carson City and begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Dr. Mary Przinski. I'm here representing the Nevada Association of School Superintendents, the organization that's composed of all 17 superintendents in the state. And first of all, we want to thank the governor for bringing this piece of legislation forward. Just a few days after he was inaugurated, he came and met with the Association of School Superintendents. All the superintendents were there here in Carson City to talk with him about what their major concerns were. What they talked about was violence in the schools and the lack of discipline and the concerns they had about safety for their staff and for their students. Soon after the governor heard all this, he sent one of his staff members, Miss Rich, to another superintendent's meeting with a draft of this bill, AB 330. And all the superintendents were able to look at this bill, and they were able to offer their own suggestions and share with the governor and with his staff member, actually share with the staff member at that time, their concerns about what had been written. Some changes were made, and eventually you have the bill in front of you today. There is no question about the violence in our schools. You've already heard a lot. You're going to hear more this afternoon. Every child deserves to be safe in school, and every teacher needs to be able to go to class and feel safe. We all know that, and that's what this bill is designed to do. So the superintendents are in full support of AB 330, and we hope that you will be able to support this bill too, for the sake of our kids and the sake of our staff members. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Bilbray Axelrod, Vice Chair Taylor, Governor Lombardo, and the Assembly Education Committee members. My name is Jeff Horn, and I am the Executive Director of the Clark County Association of School Administrators and Professional Technical Employees, representing over 1,450 Clark County School District administrators. CASAPI, as we're known, is in support of AB 330 and appreciate the work and time that Governor Lombardo and the Governor's education team took to develop these proposed changes for restorative practices. Administrators agree that core issues contributing to the inappropriate student actions should be addressed in a positive, compassionate, and respectful manner. However, the current implementation of restorative practices has failed to address the most detrimental student behaviors. In my role as the Executive Director of CASAPI, I frequently hear from site-based administrators as well as teachers and support professionals who have sustained physical injuries as well as other threats of bodily harm from disruptive and out-of-control students. Educators are exhausted and need your help. I think we all can agree that what is currently in place is not working. Our educators are being battered, disrespected, and intimidated by students who know that there are little to no consequences for their misbehavior. AB 330 will provide education professionals the ability to temporarily remove habitual, violent, disruptive students from the school setting. The ability to allow our site-based administrators, teachers, and support professionals an opportunity to provide nurturing and respectful educational environment that all students deserve. Ultimately, the best solution for successful restorative practice is to lower class size and have a quality caring teacher in each classroom. Until we resolve the critical labor shortage, we, educators, will continue to struggle to impact student behavior in a consistent and positive manner. We are optimistic that this too will be addressed during the legislative session. With that said, CASAPI is happy to stand with our fellow educators in support of AB 330. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew Fueling, Superintendent, Carson City School District. I'd like to thank the governor for developing education policy the best way with a wide range of eyes and experiences involved, and including school and district leadership. As a new superintendent, I had 29 staff listening sessions across the district in the late fall, and the number one concern was the frequency and severity of student behavior. While there certainly was concern for their own safety, more often than not, these heroes were more concerned about the impact to other students witnessing violent behaviors and missing a healthy educational environment. I have staff angry that they have to worry about safety and what should be the safest of environments. I have parents angry because the learning and safety of 25 students is at risk when they get evacuated from a room due to the repeated violent behavior of one. My administrators are angry because they don't feel like they have real options to keep their schools safe and instead are buried in paperwork and time-intensive but ineffective options. We cannot continue to ask our people to do more without the time resources, people resources, or financial resources. In the case of violence in schools, there must be zero tolerance just like there is in any other workplace. If nationally 22% of school staff have reported some level of violence against them in schools, and approximately 30% say they are considering leaving education because of safety concerns, as was found in a recent survey by the American Psychological Association, then change is required. If my staff has broken noses, broken wrists, broken orbitals, and bone bruises, then change is required. With staffing shortages plaguing our industry and the education pipeline drying up, change is required. Again, thank you to the governor for supporting positive change.
Thank you for your testimony. And thank you for coming up to the table. We do have a number of questions, as I'm sure you're not surprised. So I will start with, we'll go with Vice Chair Taylor.
Madam Chair, would you like me to walk through and highlight the bill first?
That would be wonderful. We've all just read it so many times, it's just kind of second nature, but I think that would be very good to have on the record. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Chair Bilbray Axelrod, Vice Chair Taylor, and members of the esteemed Assembly Committee on Education. My name is Joan Ebert, for the record, and I proudly serve as the State Superintendent of Public Instruction in Nevada. I'm joined today by Christy McGill, who is currently serving as the Interim Deputy Superintendent of Student Achievement and has spent the last 5 years as the Director of the Office for Safe and Respectful Learning Environments. We are here today to walk you through AB 330, also known as the Safer and Supportive Schools Act. As you heard, this bill was developed by the governor in conjunction with education leaders, the superintendents, teachers, support staff, representatives of the community as well. This bill will provide school staff with additional discipline approaches in their classrooms, give parents peace of mind that their children are safe while they're at school, and ensure students are in a safe environment while maximizing learning. The provisions of this bill apply to public schools, charter schools, and the University School for Profoundly Gifted Students. The Safer and Supportive Schools Act makes changes to the state and district restorative justice and progressive discipline plans. These changes allow for education agencies to develop policies and practices to meet the unique needs of their individual schools, the staff that they work with, the students, and their families. Starting with Section 1 and 13 of the bill, this removes the requirement for the statewide restorative justice framework. Section 6 makes changes to school district plans for progressive discipline. Currently, the Board of Trustees is required to establish a plan of restorative discipline. This plan is then passed down and adopted by each school. The Safer and Supportive Schools Act makes several changes to the plan. First, this bill clarifies that the plan cannot interfere or restrict the ability of a teacher or administrator to temporarily remove a disruptive or violent child from the classroom. Second, it requires that the plan consider data collected on disciplinary actions taken by schools and take affirmative steps to address any disproportionality in its disciplinary actions. And third, it increases accountability for schools and districts by allowing intervention from the State Superintendent of Public Instruction, where disproportionality in disciplinary measures is identified but not adequately addressed. The Safer and Supportive Schools Act clarifies language around suspension, expulsion, and permanent expulsion of students. The language in these sections of the bill ensures that all schools and classrooms have consistent policies that prioritize the safety of students and staff. Section 5 clarifies and cleans up language that provides that children in kindergarten through 8th grade should not be disciplined for simulating firearms, example, for pretending a pencil is a gun, or wearing clothes depicting a weapon unless the behaviors are disruptive to the educational environment or create the potential for harm or fear of harm. Section 8 allows for the temporary removal of a student to last longer than 3 days if in the event the principal believes the child presents an ongoing risk and the principal has the authorization from the superintendent or the administrative head of a charter school or university school. Sections 10 and 11 outline the processes for students who commit a battery or sell or distribute a controlled substance at school or on a bus. This bill provides for the expulsion of any student committing these major offenses for the first time and requires permanent expulsion for a second offense. It removes the limitations on suspension or expulsion for children under the age of 11 that commit major offenses or are deemed habitually disciplinary problems. Section 11 allows a child who is under 11 to be suspended or expelled, but only under extraordinary circumstances. This bill allows a child that is enrolled in special education to be suspended or expelled, but only after administrative review and to ensure the suspension or expulsion is conducted in a manner consistent with federal law. It additionally provides that if a child is homeless or living in foster care, they can be suspended or expelled. Here, too, the bill requires additional steps, in this instance, consultation with the child's advocates and a determination by an administrator that the behavior in question was not the result of homelessness. The Safer and Supportive Schools Act provides various other changes around the reporting of discipline and the appeals process. Section 4 changes school reporting on the discipline of students by requiring discipline data to be reported to the superintendent or the administrative head of a charter school or university school instead of the Board of Trustees. Section 7 of the bill allows the principal of a school to limit a teacher's ability to temporarily remove a student from the classroom if the principal should determine that the teacher's actions are unnecessary. However, the teacher can appeal the decision of a principal to the superintendent or administrative head of a charter or university school. Section 9 also allows for an appeal to the superintendent or administrative head of a charter school or university school as opposed to the Board of Trustees by a teacher who believes a student should be identified as a habitual behavior problem after the principal of the school has determined that the student should not be deemed a habitual behavior problem. In Section 9, it permits the appeal by the student or their family or guardian to the superintendent or administrative head of a charter school or university school instead of the Board of Trustees. I would like to end my testimony this afternoon by acknowledging these are tough and complex issues to navigate. The goal of the Safer and Supportive Schools Act is to provide teachers, schools, students, local education agencies with more tools and flexibility to meet the needs of all their students and return the decision-making back to the people who are closest to the children in the schools. I want to thank you for your time this afternoon, and Director McGill, Interim Deputy Superintendent, and I stand ready to answer questions that you may have.
Thank you for that testimony, and I think I think everyone on this committee has a question, so everyone's kind of turning around to let me know, but I got the order, so we will start with Vice Chair Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Madam Superintendent. I have I don't know how many questions you're going to give me. So I'm reading that look on your face, so I'll keep it tight. This is regarding the overall intention of the bill, if you will, is to really remove this, one of it, there's several, so one of them is to remove the statewide restorative justice framework. Yes?
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, yes.
Okay, thank you, thank you. So in that, I just want to ask you a little bit, in terms of what we have from an existing standpoint, what does what are the existing regulations, state regulations, laws regarding restorative justice look like? And what I'm getting to is this, answer that first, and I'm trying to keep it tight before I get the side eye from the chair. Okay.
Christy McGill for the record. So the existing is a district plan that goes through how a student, the restorative, if they get in trouble, or that they have a student level plan for restorative practices, and then also lays out how they are going to address discipline issues as we move through. The NDE, we have been really consistent of recommending multi-tiered systems of support as a framework to build upon. And so really looking at the data and making sure that teachers have teams. So, you know, even though that requirement is removed from the state, those good practices can still exist at the district level.
Okay, thank you, Ms. McGill. So really, from the regulation standpoint, the regulations from NDE says that each school will develop a plan surrounding a student-centered plan, if you will. In that, can you talk a little bit about the requirement from a training standpoint?
There was no required training, although we did recommend that training occur, of course. And so within the within NDE and within the regulations, we looked at what needs to be the pieces that we recommend for training. So one is, of course, restorative practices, proper threat assessment, and we really, during the pandemic, because it was a rocky implementation during the pandemic, we really took a no wrong door approach in that training and offered it, either supported the districts to get that training going or did training at NDE levels ourselves.
That was Christy McGill for the record.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sorry, Ms. McGill, will you explain what is a no wrong door approach? What is it? I'm sorry.
Christy McGill for the record. Yes, sorry, that's our own saying. Really just wanting to make sure that we had different avenues because it was during the pandemic. It was a very rocky period and schools and districts were caught up in all different things, if you remember correctly. So what we wanted to do is try to make it as easy as possible. We realized that something like restorative practices takes an implementation cycle of almost 2 to 5 years. And so what we really wanted to do is that first, here is what restorative practices is. So we brought in national representation around helping us train what restorative practice was.
May I continue? Thank you, Madam Chair. And to your credit, I will say this: I've heard really good things about the restorative justice training that was provided by NDE, and I think, Ms. McGill, you're helping as I get to, as we examine restorative justice. We know it was passed in 2021, and then 2019, 2020, we got into the pandemic, so the implementation was, I'll say, rocky, right? Just because that was your word. So we really didn't have much, and then the training of it wasn't mandatory in it. And so my question is, do you think it's wise to something we didn't really get to roll out well, that we really rolled out rocky, that we really didn't get training in, or training can look like whatever we wanted training to look like, we should get rid of it? You think that might be wise, or maybe you think it might be another alternative to say maybe we should go back and roll it out right first?
Thank you for the question, woman, Vice Chair Taylor. For the record, Superintendent Ebert, in the bill itself, it was written, what's being removed is that the plan was optional if there were funds available. And so what the bill does is state the removal of that plan at the state level as a requirement. It does not remove the plan that we have. So as a Department of Education, we will still be supporting school districts because the rest of the bill is based on work that has been done and still needs to be completed, as you noted. And then also, too, because several of our speakers, and we know during the time in all of the work that has transpired, it's not just looking at our restorative justice practices and the work that we've done and the professional development, but also when we look at the front end with preventative, right, our social emotional learning, we have that professional development support going on as well. So it's not the requirement, that it is here is being removed. However, the action and the steps and the plan itself will still remain in place.
I appreciate that. Thank you both so much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Next, we will go to Assemblywoman Torres.
Thank you. And to kind of build off of what my colleague said, I mean, I guess that frustrates me, right? This concept that we didn't have funds to implement restorative justice training, even though we received millions of dollars in funds from ESSER funds and ARP funds, funds that still haven't been spent on social emotional learning, which restorative justice and restorative practice are closely aligned. So I think that there definitely were the funds. There was just a lack of effort to provide the support and training to teachers. I have two separate questions, though, that I kind of want to talk about. And, over and over again in this presentation, we heard about flexibility, right? We heard about options for principals. And I'm frustrated looking at a policy here that takes away those options for administrators. Because when we had this conversation in 2019, it was about making sure that in statute, we didn't say that in every single case you do exactly this. Because we don't even do that in the criminal justice system. We say if this occurs, these might be your range of options. And that's not what this bill does. This says if a student does this, this is what you do. If a student does this, this is what you do. And I think as an educator myself, that seems to really tie the hands of administrators. So can you tell me what options then would be available to administrators, or would it tie their hands?
So again, complex issues. What this bill tries to get at is the violence, is the battery against teachers, is the guns, and is the distribution. What we're hoping to focus on is that by allowing the removal, that we can now focus on Tier 1 supports that reduce that. So it really does focus on the determination and trying to get out of, because again, we don't want those other students to compound the issue. And so really allowing time for the schools and districts to focus on Tier 1 to reduce that.
And I'm all in with Tier 1 supports. Let's provide stronger MTSS training. Let's work with schools. Let's work with educators to do that. But this bill doesn't do that. So to come here and tell me we're having a conversation about MTSS, about SEL, that's not what this bill does. This bill is specifically looking at student discipline. And we need to have a conversation about what this language is. And this bill isn't fixing those things. And, administrator after administrator come up here today to talk about the lack of resources in those areas. And so that's what we need to be having a conversation in. We need to be having a conversation about the vacancies that we have in our schools. Like, this is not a conversation about social emotional learning. This is not a conversation that we're having about providing support to students. My next question is specifically aimed at looking at section, if the chair would allow. Thank you. Looking at Section 7 of the bill, which is specifically removing the rights that teachers were given in 1999 in AB 521, which allowed for educators to remove a student from our classroom. So we're having a conversation right now saying this bill empowers teachers. We're having a conversation. The governor specifically said that this bill gives teachers the ability to control our classroom. As an educator myself, as a daughter of an educator, as a sister of an educator, I'm telling you right now, this bill does nothing of the sort. In fact, it's removing our ability to remove students from the classroom because it completely leaves that in the hands of the principal. And I know because I was there in 2019 when restorative justice rolled out. I was in the classroom when restorative justice rolled out. And we were told schools as a system could not suspend or expel, which is not what the bill did. Just to clarify, there were still things like guns that were completely expellable and permanently expellable. But when I'm looking at the language in this legislation, it's saying that I wouldn't even have the ability to remove a student. And remove is not defined. We probably should go back and define that in statute to be very clear what a removal might be. Because a removal could be, when I think about as in education in terms of removal, that could be removal to counselors, removal in other areas. But then when I'm looking at this language, it says that it's really the principal's call. And I'm not comfortable with that. As an educator in 2021, I had a student that was violent and aggressive in the classroom, and that student was changed classes so that I could be safe in my classroom and my students could be safe in our classroom. And they continued to be at the same school. And this bill would remove that right for me to even have a say in it. It gives it all to the principal. So can you talk a little bit about the flexibility or how this empowers teachers or how this is going to impact teachers?
Thank you, Assemblywoman Torres. So prior to going to...
For the record.
Thank you for the record, Superintendent Ebert. So teachers do have the power to remove students from the classroom. That is the first portion of this work. It is only after the principal working with the teacher and the student and the situation, right? As you noted, every single situation is unique. And in some instances, and I believe you know this data as well, in some instances, the principal needs to interject with the teacher and the student and the family to make sure that the learning environment continues. So it is not to remove the teacher's right, because that is the first layer of this entire bill. This is the very first layer. The teacher does have the right. But we do have instances where additional help and support is needed, and that child needs to be in that class. And that, by working together with the administration, with the teachers, that is the intent here, to move forward as a team and not just as a siloed person, because this is a human structure that we're dealing with.
Thank you. And I guess in close, I don't have another question, but I guess that's frustrating to me, right? That we give because there is nothing that says that this is a team or that this is a conversation or that they're going to work together. It completely disempowers educators from having any say on the culture of their classroom and what that's going to look like. And I would urge the bill sponsor to look at this language, because what it's really doing is taking away the rights of teachers like myself in those instances. And it's saying that the principal has all the power. And this would give the principal, and I know that there will definitely be situations if this were to pass, where principals will remove all power from any educators in their school building to ever remove students, because that's what's going to happen. And this is going to make my classroom less safe. Thank you.
We will go to Assemblywoman Hanson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being here. Kind of taking off a little bit on some of the things my colleagues have talked about so far. We talk about it removes the framework of restorative justice, but does this bill remove restorative justice practices? And then I just have a follow-up to that, if that'd be okay, Chair.
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, it does not remove restorative justice practices. It still is maintained throughout the bill.
Okay, and maybe we could touch on, I think I see it, but I just want to clarify that on the record. Can you tell us what the benefit, like from the state perspective, what is the benefit of the districts having the responsibility, to develop the plan versus the state drop down? Could you give us some benefits of that on the district level?
Christy McGill for the record. Yes, following that multi-tiered systems of support framework, really the district should examine their data, their culture, their teachers' needs and their students' needs to come up with a plan that best fits them. I mean, we could definitely give guidance and what good looks like, but really what evidence suggests is that needs to address that particular district, that particular schools, that particular community's strengths and assets and issues.
Okay, I know Assemblywoman Anderson has several questions. Assemblywoman Ruhatch, do you have one question? Please, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for answering our questions today. So I would like to echo my colleagues' concerns as a teacher. I think that Section 7, Sub 6 is some of the most anti-teacher language that I have read in a bill. And I think that it will, in fact, make my classroom more dangerous. And I am just very confused on the messaging today because we are being told we want to give more power to the people that are there in the classrooms, and that is the exact opposite of what this does. It says, if in the reasonable judgment of the principal, that's it, the principal. And I would like to share an experience that I have gone through. I served under a principal who is still a principal today, and I am not serving under her any longer, where when there were assaults on staff, she removed the staff member and pressed charges on the staff member and did nothing to the individuals that were assaulting the staff member. And in fact, what happened in that school where I was serving is students were so disturbed that their favorite teacher was getting punched or kicked that they started saying, "You punched my favorite teacher, so I'm punching you." And they started literally a vigilante justice system to protect their teachers because that principal was not protecting the teachers and was not protecting the students. And the students that are witnessing that violence are being traumatized. And I am deeply disturbed that we are taking away a teacher's discretion to ever remove a student from a room without written permission from the principal. And so what I would just like to know is how those messages square with no other oversight besides a principal to give a teacher permission to remove a student from a room.
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, so there is a process through this bill, as noted, teacher having that ability. In the section, letter C in this bill, in Section 7, it does have the principal, which you noted. And then also it goes on to, if the teacher disagrees, there is a process for the teacher to escalate it to the superintendent or the administrative head of the charter school and or university school. So there is a process in place. And I very strongly hear and care for deeply all of the teachers on this committee. The voice that is not here at the table, which I will carry at this moment, is the student voice that also needs to be taken into consideration. And so it's a balance of the students' rights, the teachers' rights, having the whole entire system come together. And it's making sure that when it is out of balance, that there are steps in place which take into consideration and protect all as it moves forward.
So I appreciate that you are speaking for the students, but I believe I am speaking for the students too, who are witnessing this trauma and are witnessing the violence, which is happening and I think does need to be addressed. I would point out that in my district, when you appeal to the superintendent or the superintendent's representative, that is weeks or months that you are waiting. And so I'd like to know what is supposed to happen in that classroom while the teacher is waiting for that appeal to be processed.
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, I think you brought up a good point with timeline, which is not included in this section, so thank you.
Next, we will go to Assemblywoman Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to address the sponsor of the bill, which is the governor, but on your behalf that you are acting. My question has to do with what previous Assemblywoman Taylor said, but I want to go into this deeper because when we have Assembly Bill 168, in which the governor says he wants to take away from us right now. So AB 168, which was enacted July 1st, 2019. And the school year began in August of 2019. The pandemic happened several months after. Where is the data of all of this violence that happened in that school year between 2020, 2021, and part of 2022 when the kids were back into school? Where is the data? Please show me the data. If you don't have it right now, please, I would like to see that data, and I'm sure everyone on this committee would like to see that. That restorative justice did not work during that school period when those kids were at home, unless you have data showing that violence were occurring in the home, and it could have been.
Thank you for the question, Superintendent Ebert. For the record, so we do have data that we can share with the entire, make sure, Madam Chair, that we provide for you. And in the context of this body of work that everyone has been, because both Director McGill and I sat in testimony in 2019 with Assemblyman Thompson as well. We also worked on Assembly Bill 68 in 2021. And I will tell you that the very first piece of implementation, and so a quick sidebar, any bill that does this body of work, we've highly recommended and actually will graciously ask that July 1st enactment is extremely difficult. When that bill passed in 2019, and the department was tasked with coming up with guidance and all of that body of work that needed to go out with school districts, it literally took us working with the superintendents, working with our mental health professionals. We use a triad of approach with our mental health professionals, our law enforcement, and the school community. And you know, I still remember driving out to Elko, working with the team on the memorandum to go out to support an implementation. And we know that AB 168 was spot on in the timing and what needed to happen because the data, to your point, disproportionality changes need to happen. Since that time, we've had the pandemic. We've had, I do want to add into, with the pandemic, having the face-to-face professional development, we did set aside $4 million out of the federal funding to provide professional developments and supports. But we were in a global pandemic and no one can predict that. So where do we go having all of that data, all of those life experiences that we all bring to the table today? How do we take all of that and move forward and make what started with AB 68, continued with AB 168, moved on to AB 68, in today's environment with a pandemic and crises that has transpired, we're here to work with all of you to make it better. And based on data is huge, so we will provide that for you as well.
And follow up, Chair, please. Okay, just to be specific with the data that I'm looking for, all right, Clark County and Washoe, specifically during that time period, what did the data look like that you use restorative justice? Thank you.
And the governor in his testimony cited several examples that I would like to get those numbers. He said they were all cited sources, so if we could get that as well, I'd appreciate it. I wasn't kidding that every single person except one has a question. So, no, yeah. So we're gonna kind of go back and forth. Assemblyman Koenig, you are next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My concern has already been answered, so I'm going to withdraw my question.
Thank you. All right. So now there were two. Assemblyman De Silva.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a few things that I just want to clarify here. One, I think I totally agree with my colleague, Assemblywoman Torres, that we need to really define the word removal, what that means. It's through and through here throughout the legislation, and it's kind of problematic, I think, for us to even have a conversation about a topic like expulsion without clearly knowing what that term means and what we're working with in regards to the language of this bill. Another thing too that I was a bit concerned about, I need some clarification on, is this concept of the ability of a teacher to remove a student will be limited, and the language pertaining to those specific clauses. Again, I think this legislation is subject to interpretation and perspective, and the way that I'm looking at this and reading into this is that we as educators know that different teachers have different responses to their students. Some are just better at handling and managing the classroom. And I think that some of the language here could give license to educators to constantly just remove students, whatever that may be, and this I think sets these students up on a trajectory where they're getting a record. They're being removed, and it's not really because of the issues that they're bringing to having in the classroom. It's the teacher that could be sending them out. So I want to know what this means. This ability to remove a student will be limited. What exactly the limitation is. And then lastly, when I'm looking at this legislation vis-a-vis AB 285, my colleague Assemblywoman Taylor's legislation here, I know that you did mention that there is restorative aspects to this bill through and through. When I look through it, it seems much more punitive than it does restorative. So I wanted to ask you as well, what's your vision through this bill in regards to creating or implementing some of the restorative elements that you've been alluding to? Thank you.
Christy McGill for the record. So I think what this bill and probably the other two are trying to do is create that balance between safety and teaching the behavior we really want our kids to learn. And so the restorative piece comes in with this bill in the requirement for the districts, if they have disproportionalities of discipline, so then they need to address those disproportionalities through, and one of those ways is through restorative practices, through MTSS, to really, again, get us out of the tier 1. This bill is all about tier 3, and it's really painful to talk about tier 3 strategies independently, because nobody really wants to see kids get isolated and removed from schools. But there's safety concerns. So again, trying to get that balance right. So if too many kids, and especially if there's disproportionalities or not fair, then the district has to address those within the plan, the progressive and restorative plan that they give to the Department of Education every year.
It seemed like you were going to have a follow-up. That's why.
Quick follow-up. And what about the other two aspects then? This idea of teachers being able to remove students, and what does that look like? What do you envision that to be in regards to the limitations that are placed? Because that one of my concerns here is that you'll have teachers constantly removing students, whatever removal may be, and that could in and of itself cause a cascading problem that could be a real issue for our students. Thank you.
Christy McGill for the record. Yes, and the ability for those checks and balance. So if there is a teacher that constantly has to be removing students, there is a broader issue. And so again, going and pushing this into tier 1, what are those issues? How can the team come together to really address those? And making sure that our teachers have that team. And so again, it's that balance. So we don't want it to get so far over where you said that, there's constant removals, and yet we want the kids to stay safe. So if there are multiple removals, there has to be a red flag somewhere that this is occurring, and so that then the principal and the teachers and the team can work together to see, again, if we can prevent that.
Thank you. So we will go to Assemblywoman Hardy.
Thank you, Chair, for the question, and thank you for being here and presenting the bill and being part of trying, as I think you expressed, find a balance in what we're trying to do here as educators and keeping our kids safe, our schools safe. So I wanted to just focus on parts of the bill you mentioned that gives oversight to superintendents. If you could maybe just talk a little bit more about exactly the purpose of shifting it to the superintendents, and kind of what the oversight is and how that process would work in those sections of the bill, if you would. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Superintendent Ebert. For the record, so prior to AB 168 in 2019, it was with the superintendent, and then it was elevated up to the board level. What we've seen over time is the time, two things, and it's also been the school board or designee. And over time, what we've seen and we've heard from everyone that has participated in the system, and especially as you heard the superintendents testify as well, the timeline which can be created with the board, as you know, the board chair asked for items 24 hours in advance for this meeting. In a school board, because of the posting and all of the other requirements, it can be weeks or months to get that through the entire process that a board is required to follow. And so this way, it brings it, again, back to the superintendent, reduces the timeline for any of these instances to transpire, and, getting a resolution, getting the student back into a classroom or properly placed where they will be successful is the outline throughout in the intent of this bill.
Thank you. I was talking to our council because I was wondering, do we have a definition of disruptive? Council was saying that it's really up to the teacher what that definition is, but is that okay? Okay, so we will go to Assemblywoman Moscow, and then Anderson, and then me.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for being here today. When it comes to school discipline, what I'm always most worried about is the disproportionality, as well as for our young people who are the most marginalized. And so when it comes to Section 6, Sub 6, it talks about that the reporting could take 12 to 36 months. So really wanted to ask about how we could get this data in real time so that if we can see the disproportionality happening, we can fix it for young people in real time. And then also in Section 10, Subsection 11, it talks about changing discipline for homeless youth as well as those in the foster system, and really why we're doing that for our young people who we know are experiencing a lot of issues other than what's happening at school. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblywoman Maska. Superintendent Ebert, for the record, when you look at that section and the timeline and the pieces, first with your real-time data, we are working to try to get that put into Infinite Campus in a timely manner. Is it 100% today? No. It is not, but that is definitely a goal for all of us, and the school districts would like that in a timely information as well to be able to pull it. At the current moment, as these plans stand, it's a review, it's a look back, and those plans look back at the prior school year, look at disproportionality, and those pieces that need to be addressed. What is new, as you pointed out as well to this section in the plan, is that the state superintendent is now involved. There was not a role prior. It stayed at the district level. So now this comes up to the state superintendent level, reviewing for disproportionality. The specific timeline that you're looking at in line 38 says the specific corrective period shall be at least 12 months and not more than 36 months. That's the time to correct. What it doesn't have in here, again, and I heard a couple other timing pieces, is when the state superintendent of public instruction, the timeline for currently myself, that position to respond and put in place. So that currently is not in here. What is in here is how long the school district has to respond once the corrective action plan is put into place with that school district.
Christine McGill, for the record, I just want to add, so I think you were almost getting at two things. So there was a systems piece where we really want to review the systems, but you also want to make sure that students themselves are getting to the proper interventions at the proper time. And that's what really is that system I've been talking about, what really becomes so important, that if a child starts to struggle, we want to intervene earlier so that we're not going to these tier 3 practices of suspension and expulsion. And so that's the reason why these systems in place, but they take people. And that's been one of the biggest barriers thus far. And so really we do recognize, and the districts recognize, that there is a systems piece around disproportionality that is very important that we'll do at the state level. But then there's also that equity piece at the school level. And the schools are really looking at, some of them use Swiss, some of them use different kinds of data for that real time, where does the student start to struggle so that they can intervene earlier.
Assemblywoman Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. And I want to say that I appreciate this sort of discussion as opposed to a grainy video that's attempting to create fear for our students and our parents and our teachers. So I just wanted to put that out there, that is very upsetting to see, that as opposed to having a conversation around these issues, there are some other individuals who would rather do it by video. So I appreciate the time that you are here to talk about this very important issue. And I share the passion that others on this committee have already shown about some sections, and the feeling that teachers have of being supported. And I appreciate the fact that the word "allow teachers to do their jobs" was present in the governor's speech as well as the principal's speeches. And I would hope that it's not just teachers. It is also support professionals, counselors, speech language pathologists, and some of our other educators who might not have the word teacher as part of their name. I realize that it's much easier to use the word teacher, but there are many educators on every campus and every school setting. If it is okay with the chair, I would like to go through numerous questions I believe I've sent to you, and I'll just go through the different lists. So I'm going to take Mr. MacArthur's, my colleagues' questions as well. My first question actually comes from page 9. It is lines A through C, and is the removal of the removal of the language that deals with substantially disrupts learning by pupils, or just substantially disrupts the educational environment at the school. This was language that was added in, I believe, in 2017 and has been discussed for some time. So I was wondering why that was decided to be removed.
Superintendent Ebert, for the record.
It is at the top of page 9, lines 1 through 8.
So in this section, lines 1 through 8, those components actually is just moved to a different section. So this is the policy with NRS 392.4634. And so that was moved, it's in alignment with what we've added on page 8, lines 26 and 27.
Follow up on that specific. I like the new language as well. However, I feel that it is too open because, again, we go back to the same issue that had been brought up earlier from my colleague regarding it being a decision of somebody else. So I would like to see that back in there. The next one, if possible. When we look at page 10, don't worry, I do not have a question on every page, although it's pretty close. On page 10, when it comes to letter H, in line 6, you include consideration of a separate NRS statute, but yet that is statute related to data. So how exactly how is that supposed to be utilized with that data? Is it, oh, this individual's been in trouble 4 times, so I'm not going to do something? Or is there another expectation with the utilization of data in this way?
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, so the expectation here is to be inclusive of the MTSS work that we do with our school districts.
Thank you. And so is that MTSS actually part of that NRS language, or is that a consideration of policies and procedures or regulations that have been created?
It is an evidence-based framework that looks at data. And so that, again, trying to move into early interventions. And so it looks at data, what the needs of the school are, and then coming up with evidence-based practices to address those needs in a very systematic way.
And your name is?
I'm sorry, Christy McGill.
Thank you, Ms. McGill. I do it all the time, too. But is that evidence-based framework discussed in that NRS? Because I don't believe I remember seeing that. But from your answer, which I appreciate that answer very much, the understanding is it is based upon that. Am I understanding that correctly?
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, we would need to recheck that NRS. It wouldn't want to give you any misinformation.
And you can phone a friend.
Thank you, Dr. Ebert, for that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Asher Killian, Community Council. So the section being referenced there is NRS 392-462, which is the section of law that requires each public school to collect data on pupil discipline. The method that's used to analyze that data is not mentioned in that section. That section is just the requirement to gather the data.
Thank you. Thank you. So, may I continue? Okay, thank you. The next section is one that might need a little bit more clarification, and it is me trying to figure out a calendar. One of my peers has already brought this up. It has to do with page 11 with the new 6, and you did mention it, but it has to do with the timeline of, and you've lined it all out in the area before that by a certain date, September 15th, the principal must review the plan with the school staff. By 15 days later, there must be corrections. 15 days later, it must be posted the item on their website. And then a month later, the Board of Trustees are able to submit a written report. The state superintendent's review of this information, if I'm understanding correctly, is only from the first quarter, or is it from the prior year? Or I'm very confused by the timeline of what the review of the superintendent is actually looking upon.
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, the plans that are submitted review the data from the prior school year. So they would be submitted up to the superintendent in November, and then we would start that review. That November timeframe, though, is looking at the prior school year.
Thank you. And so a follow-up with that is then the superintendent's recommendations, I guess, does the State Board of Education ever come into play, or is it always based upon the state superintendent? Or even does the interim education committee of this body ever come into play or have any sort of discussion around these items?
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, the team at the Nevada Department of Education frequently involves the State Board of Education in all of our reports. We do present the data to the State Board of Education. The new language that is here does not have the State Board of Education in the cap, nor specifically to your question, the Interim Committee on Education.
And thank you, because the chair's, I think, getting ready to get like a little hook, make her guest stop. My last question, again, goes to an area that has already been brought up, and it has to do, again, with page 13, number 6. How is this not creating an hostile work environment, especially if you're in a school that is a smaller school? You might only have 30 people that are educators, and you are unable then to send a student out anymore without written permission. And although I understand the intent, unfortunately, how does this not create an unsafe or a hostile work environment for an educator?
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, as I mentioned earlier, the process is outlined to protect all parties, the teacher, the students in the classroom, and the administration, and the professionals within the entire system. And so there is that opportunity that if that is becoming an issue, the teacher can go to the superintendent as well as the authority of the charter school or the university school.
Thank you. And again, I want to make sure that this is clear as well. On page 21, there is a discussion about 10-day suspension. Sorry, Chair. I want to make sure that this is still in guidelines with the federal legislation, and all of this would would work with federal guidelines.
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, yes, this is in alignment with the federal guidelines, and if you want to have double down from our special education, okay, thank you.
And thank you, Chair, for so much time, and thank you for answering.
Okay, so as you know, we have a lot of teachers on this committee, and very important that we look at this through the lens of teachers who are absolutely working there every single day. I am going to look at it for a second from the kids. And the fact that my colleague talked about homeless and foster youth and children under the age of 11 years old being expelled. What are we doing with these kids? I mean, the whole thing that brought this to be was because of, we talked about the black and brown kids, the school to prison pipeline. I mean, I just, where are these kids going that we're expelling at 11 years old?
Again, Christy McGill for the record. Complex issues and really trying, yes. So if the worst happens and a 9-year-old brings a gun to the school, how do we balance the responsibility in making sure we teach that? And so really what this bill hopes to get at is an and not an or, to balance that school safety and also have some warning or red flags in place so that those needs can be addressed early on and throughout. So there is a clause in here that does say for a child under 11 that the principal can look at it and turn it around based upon the needs. So again, it's a way to slow down the system and to focus on safety, and then to really get down to what I think you're saying. And again, I don't think anyone in the education field really wants to suspend and expel kids. We want them there. And so how do we then really safely starting to address their needs?
Okay, I think we will ask you to step back and we'll go into testimony in support of AB 330. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair.
Mm-hmm. We will, actually, let's start in Vegas I see 3 people, and then we'll come here. Just a reminder, we have 20 minutes in support, opposition, and neutral. So let's start in Vegas, the first 3.
Thank you, Madam Chair, committee members. My name is Marie Nices. I'm the president of the Clark County Education Association. CCEA is in support of Assembly Bill 330, and we appreciate the governor's efforts in making the issue of school safety a top priority. This fall will be my 30th year in CCSD. I spent my entire teaching career working at Title I schools with our most at-risk students. I've seen the rise in violent behavior on our campuses firsthand. And as the president of CCEA, I hear from educators across the district about the daily disruptions and violence in their classrooms and at their schools. Already this year, more than 200 weapons have been found on CCSD campuses. And the increase in assaults and physical harm to our staff and students alike is unprecedented. This is the legislative session where we are finally looking to make the historic investments in education that we so desperately need. And with that investment comes an expectation of improved student outcomes. But those outcomes aren't simply a function of funding. When we have disruptive and violent behavior in our classrooms, it compromises the learning environment, and one student has the ability to derail the learning for their entire class when this kind of behavior isn't met with the appropriate consequences. One critical component of this legislation in particular is the ability for an educator to remove a violent or disruptive student from their classroom. I can't stress enough how vital this will be to empowering educators to maintain a safe and productive learning environment for all of their students. Every day, frontline educators tell me how they are afraid to come to work, and we've seen a rise in chronic student absenteeism because our students don't feel safe at school. The bottom line, when students don't feel safe, students don't learn. It is time to cultivate a culture of deterrence on our campuses that prevents the kind of violent and disruptive behavior we are currently dealing with in our schools on a daily basis. And we believe AB 330 has the potential to accomplish that goal. It's time to safeguard the learning environment so educators can focus on instruction and students can learn. In closing, legislators must act now. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person in Las Vegas.
Good afternoon, honorable legislators and Madam Chair. I am here before you this afternoon to provide proof why Assembly Bill number 330 should be adopted. I am also a member of CCEA. My name is Greta Blunt Johnson. I will be speaking from my own experience. I was assaulted by a student a year and a half ago at Canyon Springs High School, which resulted in multiple body injuries. I had multiple surgeries over a year of therapy. I have limited use of my right arm. I suffer tremendous back and right shoulder pain. I need another surgery on my shoulder, but the doctor refused because of my age. At that time, I was 74 years of age. Now I'm on a permanent disability. No type of discipline was rendered to the student. I believe if the school board had more of a progressive discipline plan in place, it would have made the student accountable for his actions. Also, it would relieve stress from all teachers that have endured being assaulted by students in one way or another, knowing something can be done. I hope that you all support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Guzman?
Yes, hello. It's a privilege to come before you today and testify on something important, so important to all of us. My name is Peter Guzman, and I have the honor of being president of the Latin Chamber of Commerce, Nevada. First, I would like to commend our governor for making education a key component of his administration. Education is not only critical for our economic development survival, but more importantly, every kid deserves to read, write, understand math and science, and so much more. So I ask, when is it ever acceptable to put teachers and students in a dangerous setting? The answer, it should never be acceptable. But we seem to go overboard to protect those who instill fear, to the detriment of the supermajority of kids and teachers who are there to learn. Too often, in the pursuit of fairness and compassion, we end up with the exact opposite for too many. Take Jose, for example. Somehow he got a waiver and gets up at 2 a.m. and gets ready and heads out to catch the city bus in order to get to a school far away. That school his mom views as safer for her son. It takes 2 different buses to get there, and all his mom wants is a safe classroom so that he can maybe get a good education and get the family out of poverty. By the way, a scenario that is becoming more prevalent all the time. It is long overdue to bring back the idea that a school classroom is a privilege to be in, and there will be consequences for those who don't view it that way, so that the majority of kids that do understand the importance of education and safe classrooms can excel. Anything else will no longer be tolerated. This bill addresses that and more. And lastly, I can tell you without any hesitancy that our Latin Chamber members send their kids to school to learn, to get ahead, to prepare for careers in this great country. That is why the Latin Chamber of Commerce, without hesitancy, stands with this governor on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll come up to Carson City.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Paige Barnes with the Ferrado Company, here today on behalf of the Nevada Association of School Boards. We are here in support of AB 330. We appreciate the governor for bringing this bill forward. We are dedicated to safe and respectful learning environments for our students, educators, and administrators. We appreciate the local level, data-driven decision-making authority the bill provides school boards. Thank you.
Chairperson Bilbray Axelrod, Vice Chair Taylor, members of the committee. For the record, Paul Lamarca, Chief Strategies Officer with the Washoe County School District. First, let me say sorry for Dr. Enfield, who is not able to be here today. Dr. Enfield supports this bill fully, and in fact, we assisted in some of the drafting of the language. None of us wants to see students excluded from school. We must do everything we can to ensure every student has the opportunity to learn. As a district, we only recommend exclusionary practices when student, staff, or school safety is threatened. For example, there are actions that threaten safety and require immediate responses. So in addition to current rules regarding possession of a dangerous weapon, we support the removal of students on a first offense of battery with bodily injury, which is a very high standard, and for distribution of controlled substances. This results in support for the school community as well as for the student who committed the act. You will also find sections of the bill that address students covered by the McKinney-Vento Act. These are students who are homeless and in foster care. This bill introduces language that parallels the discipline of these students with the discipline of students that have IEPs, or students with disabilities. That, again, is a very high standard. It's a critical safety measure, and it is also for the safety of these students themselves. We do support the removal of the age delineation language being removed that separates 10 and younger from 11 and above. No one wants to exclude students, and there are times when students do things that require immediate action because of the safety of the school community at large, other students, staff members, and that student in particular. So we are wanting greater latitude in how we can support these students. We would never support permanent expulsion of children 10 years of age and younger. Finally, we support the language regarding the required transition planning as students transition from alternative educational settings back to traditional school settings. This is a great example of how traditional disciplinary practices should and must work together with restorative practices to support children. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next in Carson City.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Olivia Briggs, and I am from School District 31. When I heard about this bill, I was pretty excited because I have a lot of friends who have dealt with school violence or have even participated in school violence, and it scares me. And I think it's a very important issue that needs to be addressed. I'm also part of a foster family. We foster lots of younger children, but I'm friends with other foster families they foster older children who are in the school systems, and when it comes to school violence, foster children are often participants, and it can often not be handled well, and their background isn't understood. And so I think that the sections pertaining to foster children is very important, and I think that it should be widely recognized, so I appreciated that in this bill.
Thank you for your testimony. Thank you for being here. We're going to go to the phone lines and take a few callers on the phone. BPS, are there callers in support on the phone?
Callers, if you would like to testify in support of AB 330, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits 438, please press star 6 to unmute your microphone.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, distinguished members of the committee. For the record, my name is Jim Frazee, Jim Frazee. I'm a classroom educator in CCSD, and I have the honor of being vice president of CCEA. I remember being in this very room several sessions ago testifying in favor of the Restorative Justice Bill. It offered promise and hope, a new way in dealing with minor disturbances. The world has changed a great deal since that evening. The effects of COVID on the social skills of our students cannot be understated. If you would have told me before the lockdown that students would completely forget social norms, I would have never believed you. I was wrong. Unable to settle small disagreements without resorting to violence. The severity of violence has reached the point that can only be described as savage. The restorative justice law that we passed pre-pandemic cannot address the realities of today's schools. Change must come, and it must come now. Much has been made of the effect of this proposed legislation on the lives of Black and brown children, and rightfully so. I want you to hear me clearly on this. I have parents of Black and brown children that have dreams for their kids. They cannot understand the life-changing value that an education can provide. If I cannot teach a class because of the disruptive students, my kids cannot get an education. Their dreams die right there in a chaotic classroom. All of society loses out. The pipeline to prison is enlarged exponentially. I have heard opponents of this legislation say that they will harm Black and brown children. Nothing could be further from the truth. You must not confuse what is in this bill with fairness in implementation. There are two different issues. Students, parents, educators, and our state as a whole call on you to take decisive and urgent action now. I urge you to support this bill, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. And just for the record, so everyone understands, I'm going to take 2 more callers in support. Then I'm going to go to Las Vegas, and then we will come to you. Okay? All right. 2 more callers in support.
Caller with the last 3 digits 051, you're unmuted on our end. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Elizabeth Adler, ELIZABETH I'm a veteran Spanish and ELL teacher at Sunrise Mountain High School and a member of the Clark County Education Association. I am here today to speak in support of Assembly Bill 330, the Safer and Supportive Schools Act. In the 25 years I've taught in CCSD, I have witnessed a significant increase of disruptive and violent behavior among students. In the past, students have been held accountable for their actions, and the immediate discipline for most students was enough to remediate this behavior and discourage them from doing it again. The progressive discipline was a reminder that further misbehavior would result in more severe consequences. Measures were in place for students to learn what behavior was acceptable and how to deal with these behaviors in productive and appropriate ways. The restorative justice process has never referred to the elimination of consequences. Responsibility is the one principle of restorative justice that we should agree that students must learn in any and all situations. In extreme cases of harm to others or violence, a student should be held responsible for his or her actions. In 2013, the American Academy of Pediatrics issued a statement urging that exclusionary practices are inappropriate and only used in the most extreme and dangerous circumstances. I believe that what we have seen in the past few years is a direct result of ignoring consequences for behaviors that not only endanger everyone in school buildings, but more so the students who are committing these violent acts. The statement goes on to say that the benefits we see in research around restorative practices is that they promote self-regulation, teach positive social skills, and develop work and career-ready attitudes. These benefits have not been our experience since the districts in our state have replaced progressive discipline with restorative justice. The opposite has occurred. We have used it as a buzzword and have provided no adequate training, which has resulted in more violence and more dangerous schools. Without progressive discipline, we have increased opportunities for students to disregard rules with little or no consequence. Students who follow the rules and want to learn are among the victims as their right to an education is undermined. A lack of consequences has emboldened students to challenge the authority of staff and ignore the rules put in place to provide a stable and safe educational environment.
Ma'am, if I could have
learn how to be in the world through our
If I could have you wrap up your comments, just we're almost out of
Yes,
time and
I'm
we have a lot
finished.
of
I'm
people.
finishing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our children learn how to be in the world through daily interactions with them in schools, yet we're showing them that control is wielded by those who create chaos and disregard authority. Collaboration is imperative in this legislative session so that bills related to school safety are passed with integrity and fidelity, including transparency, progressive discipline, socio-emotional learning, restorative justice, and statewide mandatory training to all schools and district staff. Please support Assembly Bill 330. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. And if you have those remarks, it sounds like you were reading, feel free to submit them to our committee and we'll put them up as well. Next caller, and then we'll go to Las Vegas, and we are right up against that 20 minutes.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Governor Lombardo, and members of the committee. For the record, Cindy Martinez. I'm a retired Category 1 post-certified Nevada State Peace Officer. In the course of my law enforcement career, I encountered many criminal offenders whose criminal and violent behavior, in part, was rooted in challenging childhood home environments, lack of accountability in school, and resultant antisocial behaviors that escalated to property and violent crime. Recently, a confidential source revealed to me that a 7-year-old child in her school had repeatedly expressed dark and violent ideation to her and others in the school. And of course, I asked if it had been properly documented, and she said it had been documented. She had documented the multiple incidents, but the child remained in school. We know the 2017 Parkland shooter was a recipient of restorative justice measures, and the results were deadly at Marjorie Douglas Stoneman High School. Today, we know the learning and socialization losses resulting from Nevada's pandemic response are now exacerbated by the toxic influence of social media. The data being requested is occurring in real time in classrooms today. I submit the off-campus murder of Washoe County's 14-year-old Chloe Edwards is a data point you cannot ignore. This state cannot wait for more data to inform this legislature to change course. Governor Lombardo's direct law enforcement, quote, lived experience in the fallout of a failed school environment ought to be thoughtfully considered. Restorative justice model in today's chaotic society is unsuccessful in addressing school violence. The attendant economic and societal impacts of classroom disruptions affect the educational environment of all Nevada's children. Nevada's kids need a solidly safe school environment for their future success. By extension, the future societal stability and economic success of Nevada will be improved. I respectfully request you to support AB 330. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to go to Las Vegas now. If you guys could just try to keep your support brief, and I'll note that if we do go over time, I will give opposition and neutral that extra time as well. So please begin in Las Vegas.
Good afternoon. My name is Angie Joy, and I'm a proud CCEA member and a second grade teacher at Ann Lynch Elementary School. I'm here today to share with you why Bill AB 330 is so important. First, I would just like for you to ponder for a moment why a second grade teacher has been chosen to speak on a bill centered around violence in schools. A second grade teacher. Let that sink in for a few minutes. Teachers are being assaulted at an alarming rate, and sadly the protocols implemented in the past are not working. We cannot be effective in the classroom when it is impossible to teach a lesson due to violent and disruptive students. Every incident takes away significant learning time from students, and currently the escalation of violence is taking teachers out of the classroom for days and weeks due to the significant injuries. Dislocated shoulders, broken wrists, stab wounds are becoming a norm that is destroying your most needed workforce. This is happening at every level. Elementary, middle, and high school teachers are dealing with daily incidents, and it is impossible to do the job we love most, educating our students. At a certain point, you must put in firm policies to enforce widespread change. The time for reform is now. Teachers are leaving for good because they cannot teach and because they do not feel safe. We are the most needed profession, but also the least protected. Everybody talks about needing teachers, but no one is implementing real change to keep us safe. No one should get injured or assaulted in their workplace, but it continuously keeps happening to us. At this point, many teachers are currently employed are leaving for safer work environments or retiring early. If you look at the numbers, people are not jumping to sign up on a career as a teacher, in part due to violence. There are many issues that make the job of a teacher difficult. Our workload and pay leave much to be desired, and when coupled with violence in the classroom, the level of undesirability for this profession becomes even greater. We love what we do, but at the same time, we have had enough. Our safety, health, and well-being should not be a sacrifice for the job. We already give up unimaginable amounts of our time when over what is required, and often spend our
Uh-oh.
tired of all the lies of the safety and protocols in place that are only good on paper and not implemented at all schools due either to staff shortages or pure negligence. Stop allowing us to become sad headlines and even casualties of abuse and violence in our workplace. We cannot and will not stay in the classroom like this. Do your part and support Bill AB 330. Give all teachers the support and security of a safe working environment so we can focus our efforts on the teaching we are struggling to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I know we have 2 more people in Las Vegas. We are over our 20 minutes, so if you could just make it as brief as you can. I understand. And if you want, I don't think, Gil, we're going to not make it back to you because we've got 2 people here and we're well over on time. Thank you. We know Gil is in support. All right, please, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Susan Proffitt, Proffitt, and I'm the Vice President of the Nevada Republican Club. Thank you, Governor Lombardo. Prayers were answered today when you brought this bill to the floor. Every child has a right to feel safe in an environment that is conducive to learning. So, I find it hard to believe our education department has allowed a handful of students in various districts to disrupt the classrooms, attack, and threaten students with impunity. But as Joe promised and delivered today, he will get shit done. When my child was attacked in Illinois school, I chose to remove both of them and educate them privately. But most parents can't afford to spend $30,000 a year on education. That was over 20 years ago, so the price has gone up. As you consider the suggestions of the committee and tweak the bill, I suggest that the bill be taken one step further. I believe zero tolerance is needed in all violent acts and threats in our schools because everyday students aren't learning is another day Nevada isn't providing them the education we're paying for. I understand the bill empowers teachers to make judgment calls and remove the child, so I respectfully request that you include a clause concerning a teacher's right
Ma'am,
regarding the process
you just need to
and their
speak
protection.
to the bill. If you are in support of the bill, it is the bill as
Okay.
written. So
Until our education system has failed. Nevada is at the bottom of the nation, while a handful of students have been allowed to rob every Nevada student of a successful future. And I cannot understand why anyone, especially teachers, would not want this bill to pass if their rights were protected. So I really do ask you to consider that, and I thank you for offering a solution to a failing education system that doesn't include a tax hike.
thank you, ma'am. We'll go
Thank
to the
you
next
very
person.
much.
Thank you. Very briefly, sir, if you would.
Yes. Yeah. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the Education Committee. For the record, my name is Kenny Belknap. I'm a social studies teacher in CCSD, and I am the CCA treasurer. I'm speaking this afternoon in support of AB 330 and the changes it makes. Over the last few years, we've seen violence become an epidemic on our school campuses. Daily, educators are breaking up fights, having students threaten and possibly abuse them. For schools and educators to do our work, we cannot have constant violence and chaos erupting in the middle of the school day. The concern of violence is not just a concern of educators, but students as well. We regularly hear from our kids that they don't want to come to a certain class or to school at all because they're afraid of being assaulted or hurt or bullied in some way. And any educator will tell you not one solution for all kids when it comes to learning. The same thing goes with kids and regulating their emotions. Oftentimes these kids that are violent, they need additional supports. But these are not readily available in the system we have. We're not advocating that we just kick these kids out of the school and deny them an education. These students need more support to help them to work through their issues, but their additional emotional needs do not give them the right to interrupt and deny their fellow students an education. Any student that makes the choice to assault a fellow student or educator should be met with a zero tolerance policy. I encourage all of you to support this bill, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, and we'll end up here in Carson City. I will note, give you guys each about a minute, and then we will give opposition 25 minutes instead of 20.
Joy Trushinsky, non-paid lobbyist. My father was an educator. Overall, I support Bill AB 330, but I believe discipline begins in the home. This bill should include specifics concerning the involvement of parents from the very beginning of
Yeah, I'm gonna stop you. That you have to. We're talking about the bill as is written. So
Okay,
if
all
you
right,
have,
I'll continue. Okay, for violence, I believe restorative justice is for minor infractions, and violence. But for violence and continued disruption by a student, restoration justice does not work. There must be accountability for the students who have behavioral problems. Parents or guardians should be involved from the very beginning in the disruptive or the discipline process. Parents of disciplined students very well might need help themselves. We need to help them all. We need to remove violent, disruptive students from the classroom and even expelling them if necessary to provide safety for teachers and other students. Children cannot learn and teachers cannot teach when continually threatened with violence. Thank you very much.
thank you, and Ms. Rourke.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Nicole Rourke, representing the city of Henderson. We are here to support AB 330. Our mayor and council have seen increased concerns from our community regarding school violence, and we feel like this bill strikes a good balance for the needs of both students and educators. Thank you.
Thank you. And we are once again over the 20 minutes. We're at 26 minutes. So unfortunately, if you're on the line to call in as support, you can feel free to submit your testimony and I will make sure to get it out to members. So with that, I will close support testimony and open opposition. It is 3:31, and so we'll do 25 minutes of opposition. Begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. Jonathan Norman, NORMAN, Nevada Coalition of Legal Service Providers. There was a lot of talk about data, but we have a few reports. The Department of Justice report that says we don't have a mental health service array for our kids. We have a 2020 report by the Council of the Great Schools, 244 pages about how we are, in Clark County, we are failing kids with special education needs. We have staffing shortages of teachers, social workers, psychologists, and school counselors. We had a pandemic. We have families facing 20 to 30% rent increases, which is part of the context of kids having problems. I worry about, in this bill, kids in foster care, homeless youth, kids under the age of 11, kids on free and reduced school lunch. And kids, a lot of the conversation seems to be kids that should have IEPs and are not in the appropriate educational setting. There's things the school district could do to get them in the appropriate setting as opposed to punitive measures. Chair Bilberry Axelrod, you asked a very important question. Where are these expelled elementary students go? Where will they go? I did not hear an answer because there are no alternative schools. They will go to their homes. And the section regarding reducing a student under 11 from expulsion to suspension is in Section 10, subsection 12, and only applies to the distribution of controlled substance. Section 8 creates a de facto expulsion when the principal and superintendent can extend suspensions past 3 days when in their reasonable belief the child poses a threat to the school. There is no limit on how long they can extend it and how the family remedies that, the due process rights that are inherent when there's an expulsion. And this could function as a de facto expulsion. I want to thank you for your time. Sorry I sped through that. I don't want to take any of my other people's time, so thank you.
Appreciate it. Go ahead.
For the record, my name is Annette Magnus, and I'm the Executive Director of Battleborn Progress. We're here today in strong opposition of AB 330, not because we don't support reviewing our safety practices, but because this bill is being used as a ploy. A tax on restorative practices has been a talking point for many elected since the campaign trail, but we're still waiting on an actual solution to be presented, since we believe the prior bills were never funded nor implemented properly. Let's be abundantly clear. Expelling more students or adding more police doesn't cut it, as we saw from the hearing with CCSD yesterday. I will say, I'm extremely concerned about safety in our schools, especially since my mother is the front office manager in one. I am particularly concerned as it relates to the threat of gun violence, a topic we work on every single day. I will also say I'm a proud product of the Clark County School District, and violence happened in 2003 when I graduated from Centennial High School, far before restorative practices were in place. This is not a new issue. That said, it's shameful we are here today to use the experiences of our educators and the lives of struggling students as a pretense for reinstituting failed policies that will result in students winding up being spat out at the bottom of our criminal justice system, or they now will have a permanent mark on their record. It is also wrong to give all of the power to principals and administrators when our educators know better than anyone what they need. Plain and simple, no one can even show us data on these issues when asked today. This body needs to be about real solutions, not campaign slogans and political hit ads. We are opposed AB 330 because booting students out of school isn't about safer or supportive schools. This is about checking a box for a campaign promise at the expense of our young people. This body must support policies that will actually foster a healthier society, not poorly thought out reactionary sound bites that this bill was drafted for. Please oppose AB 330 because this bill is a cop-out, and this is not the Nevada way.
Good afternoon. My name is Robert Munson, and I am speaking today on behalf of the Nevada State Education Association. I'm also the treasurer of the Washoe Education Association. As a 25-year veteran teacher, I appreciate the intent of AB 330 to ensure educator safety. Unfortunately, it fails to do it in its current language. Violence in our school is not new, and we can go through a litany of examples, whether it is Michael Lansbury being shot and killed at Sparks Middle School in 2013, or the Pine Middle School gun brought in 2006, where 2 students were shot. This is not new, but it is now becoming commonplace, and it is becoming the norm. And our overcrowded classrooms and interruptions to teaching leading to fights involving large groups of students is not surprising anymore. They occur regularly. However, it is because of overcrowded classrooms, inadequate pay, and chaos that is leading more and more support professionals and teachers to leave the classroom. And the well-meaning intentions of the restorative justice that was introduced in the last session have failed, not because they were implemented poorly. They were never really implemented at all. There was no training for teachers, no training for administration, and ultimately led to failure. We believe that consequences need to match the actions and the offense. That AB 330's zero tolerance approach is stripping the ability of educators and principals to weigh the individual circumstances and decisions that are made together, and ultimately leads to expulsion too often. for a first infraction, rather than simply temporarily removing the student and addressing the underlying issues that led to the behavior in the first place. NSCA has called for the Respect Educator Act. We support AB 194, 285, as well as Senate Bill 152, which implement real accountability for violence, as well as giving educators the tools necessary to deal with disruptive behavior. Educators need the ability to temporarily remove a student if the behavior seriously interferes with learning and other students, and the ability of the teacher to effectively teach. AB 330 would allow the principal to take away this ability of educators, leaving educators with limited options and a more dangerous work environment, failing to achieve its stated goal. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And with that, we'll go to Las Vegas. I see two people. Please begin when you're ready.
Good afternoon, esteemed Chair and Education Committee. My name is Annette Dawson-Owens, and I'm here representing the Children's Advocacy Alliance as a School Readiness Policy Director. We appreciate our education-minded governor and his office for meeting with us on this bill, for Vice Chair Taylor and all others addressing school safety and discipline. There's much work to be done, and we look forward to continuing to find and bring solutions to Nevada. Many concerns have been brought up. A couple of our biggest concerns surround the age and the rollback of the progress with restorative practices. The Children's Advocacy Alliance is a strong proponent of measures to keep children, families, and educators safe on school campuses at all times. We are champions for those safe, effective school learning environments and know that they are so possible at every single school. We 100% support our educators as well as every single child in understanding the supports they need to be successful. Correlation is not causation. Restorative practices are being blamed as a reason for the increase in incidences and difficulties in our schools. When restorative justice is effectively implemented and used with fidelity, we actually see incidences and infractions go down. We have seen this in schools we have studied across the country, as well as in exemplars in our own communities here. The reality is restorative justice has never been fully implemented here, including in CCSD. When it is, teachers are fully supported along with children, the parents, and the community as a whole. Restorative practices and healing-centered practices center teacher safety and actively support teacher self-care so they can better support our students. It does not mean the teacher or principal cannot discipline or impose consequences. Our students and teachers have been through difficult times and continue to be post-pandemic. These stressors still exist. We have teacher shortages, learning losses, mental health issues, etc. Supports are needed for our students and community as a whole to not only cope but to thrive. What is not needed is for children to be permanently removed as young as in elementary school and for all the responsibility for their education to cease. We recently saw Senator Neal mention Peterson Behavioral and what is happening there. When that happens, we are just kicking the can down the road and not solving the issues at hand. Good schools have sound policies, procedures, and practices. They have data that shows how and what they are doing to support students and address their needs, ensuring continued growth and success. This must be what we provide in our schools. Safe, effective learning environments where all students are supported with evidence-based practices. We will pay the price for going backwards from restorative practice to zero-tolerance practices, which also disproportionately pushes kids of color and kids in poverty and also kids with disabilities out of schools. It will cost us now and down the road, impacting individual students' lives, as well as placing financial burdens on our community as a whole. Thank you very much.
Next person in Las Vegas.
Good afternoon, committee. My name is Dr. Tanya Walls, and I am representing Code Switch Restorative Justice for Girls of Color. We stand adamantly opposed to AB 330 because we don't feel like it will address safe and supportive schools, and in fact do just the opposite. I agree with all of my colleagues today who spoke in opposition. I'm going to take a little different approach. In 2019, the legislature responded to a robust and rigorous set of evidential data that illuminated the racialized application of punitive, exclusionary, no tolerance, and progressive discipline policies in Nevada's K-12 schools. As a result of these policies, we have the data. We know what these policies will do, and yet we are seeking in this bill to go back to them. Here's what they will do. Here's what they have done. Black and brown students especially those who are differently abled and or who self-identify as LGBTQIA, were 3 to 7 times more likely to be suspended and expelled from schools than their other peer counterparts for low-level subjective discipline categories like disruptive behavior. Black students, and by default their families, were more likely to be reported to DFS for cases that were deemed unfounded when investigated. Black students, and particularly girls, are more likely than any other group of girls to be referred to and or pushed into juvenile justice for infractions other students receive the benefit of the doubt for engaging. When bullied and or experiencing racial harassment, Black students and brown students are more likely to be ignored, leaving them unsafe or unsupported, and having to fend for themselves. And when they do, they are positioned as the aggressor and treated as such, despite the school and its leaders ignoring previous complaints and rendering the school an unfriendly, unsafe, uncaring, and violent place for them. Black students report feeling unsafe, unsupported, undereducated, and undercared for in the current school climate and in the previous climate under progressive discipline policies. Black and brown students are performing in low academic categories and yet are not being educated. This was what the climate and culture and education in Nevada was like before restorative justice legislations. Facts, not opinions. And yet, with no similar evidential base, no correlation or causation research, the current climate is leveraging circumstances likely caused by a national pandemic to promote a bill that ignores and instead gaslights us into believing that during the pandemic we passed this RJ legislation, we implemented it with efficacy, as intended, we carried out rigorous impact evaluation processes to determine if it was effective or not, and determined that it caused the current circumstance. It didn't. Not facts. Why would we turn back the clock? Why would we go back to something that we already have rigorous and robust data that tells us what will happen? The only reason to pass this legislation is if you don't care about all students' safety. We are not trying to push students into the prison and poverty pathways, or maybe we are. We appeal to legislators to protect this legislation because you are protecting the right to an equal education for all of our students. The legislation as written does not prohibit us from responding to violence. The will or the lack of will of those who didn't support the legislation when it was first passed and are now gaslighting us to re-implement what we already know we had is not the way. Stand strong, support this, keep AB 168.
Thank you for your testimony. We will now go to the phones. We'll take 3 callers in opposition on the phone lines.
Callers, if you would like to testify in opposition to AB 330, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller, you are unmuted on our end. You may be muted on your end. Please go ahead.
This is Aisha Goins with the Las Vegas NAACP. The restorative process has not been funded nor implemented. The NAACP supports students and we support our educators. There's a shortage of wraparound services, and I'm extremely concerned for our youth. We're having conversations and hearings and meetings about permanently expelling children, which for many of us is the same as criminalizing children. This is absolutely unsettling. I guess we're just losing hope that the children are our future. Or maybe we've just forgotten that we, at one point, were children as well. I don't know. What I do know is we cannot permanently expel children under any circumstances. In a lot of instances, it's the same as criminalizing them. And I want you all to remember that these are children, and I urge you to oppose this bill. Thank you.
Next caller in opposition.
Good afternoon. This is Anna Binder. I'm not going to reiterate everything that our fellow community members have said in opposition today, nor previous testimony. But the answer to where our children go, especially under the age of 12, is out of state. My son, for example, spent a large, predominant amount of time in and out of Spring Mountain Treatment Center, Desert Parkway, behavioral health, trying to balance keeping him in our home and a part of our family while we navigated his mental behavioral health. We have a middle school that we attend in the city of Henderson who has been given the proper resources for restorative justice, and he is a successful 8th grader in that setting. I worry about him moving to high school, but because we've had such success in the middle school arena, I go to sleep at night with hope in my heart that if he moves over to Foothill High School, that we continue that path for him. But I drew up the statistics from the Department of Child and Family Services. In 2017, we had over 252 children placements outside of the state of Nevada, and they all went to behavioral programs. For children under 12, there is a huge lack of resources within the state of Nevada. There was nowhere, and there still is nowhere, that we can send our babies who have mental behavioral health and need help. We are forced to send them out of state, away from the people who love and support them. I urge you not to do this. From the bottom of my heart, as a mother who has lived the last 14 years on a path of trying to find success for my own child in this very broken system. Thank you.
Thank you for the call. Next caller.
Callers, if you would like to testify in opposition to AB 330, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits 663, please go ahead and press star 6 to unmute your microphone.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Christian Kiliani, speaking as a 30-year special ed teacher. I wrote the original habitual discipline law in 97 and 99, and then was working with Assemblyman Thompson on his 168 to make it more appropriate to the times. And unfortunately, I think this bill really could be used to fix the implementation, because what happened with AB 168, it never got funded and never got fully implemented. And COVID hit, and we realized that there's a social emotional loss to our kids. Do we want consequences? Absolutely. But the consequences have to fit the crime, so to speak. You can weave restorative justice throughout your discipline programs, and that is something that could be done in every single school in the state of Nevada. The measures, though, there's some things that we still need to reflect on. We do not have behavioral specialists in our schools. We don't have enough counselors, social workers. We don't have paid family counseling for some of the parents of these kids, behavioral counseling. We don't even do training with our substitutes, principals, teachers, police, school aides, where they're all taught together on how do you implement a behavior plan for a special ed kid, for example. There are so many weaknesses that are there that are easily fixed that can actually make sure that our school campuses are safe and that all kids have the right to learn and that all teachers have the ability to teach. One other idea is you could have parents of school-aged children have to be required by state law to lock up their guns. That might help minimize young ones bringing a gun on campus, and then there's some penalty and it goes back to the home pipeline. There's special ed training that should actually occur. We could look at the university systems and teacher trainings to make sure that they're working on discipline, because many schools do not focus on that part of it. If you don't have discipline in your classroom, you can't teach. There's an excellent least discipline program that should be revitalized. In the long run, MTSS and SEL in special ed training should be done by the Nevada Department of Ed, and they have some good training, not by individual districts, because it's inconsistent across the state. So any training that comes about, if you do use this bill for a vehicle of something, there could be some things to actually make the implementation and the intent work. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the call. Okay, we will come to Carson City, you three. I think we lost our person in Las Vegas, but that's good because this should take us to over 25 minutes or just about that. So go ahead, Mr. Daly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris Daly, Nevada State Education Association, the voice of Nevada educators for over 120 years. NSEA genuinely appreciates the goal of AB 330 to improve educator safety. We speak from the opposition table as we seek amendments to maintain educator authority to temporarily remove a student, to ensure a balance between maintaining order and the rights of students, to maintain the role of elected school boards in the review of discipline practices, and to create a restorative justice monitoring committee. NSEA's Respect Educators Act aims to elevate the safety, well-being, and autonomy of educators in their work. This includes real accountability for any violence committed against educators and giving educators the tools necessary to deal with disruptive behavior. This is why NSEA supports Assembly Bills 194 and 285 and Senate Bill 152. The Respect Educators Act is also about the better incorporation of educator voice in decisions impacting them. In 1999, as former Assemblymember June Kiliani mentioned, NSEA advocated for the right of educators to temporarily remove a student if they believe that student's behavior seriously interfered with the learning of other students or with the ability of the staff member to discharge their duties. Language in AB 330 would allow a principal to take this ability away from certain educators, making their jobs more difficult and making schools less safe. NSEA asked that language added in Section 7, subsection 6, be struck from the bill. Instead, we would offer a process to require data of these removals to be reported to the Board of Trustees and to a newly reformed Restorative Justice Monitoring Committee. Ensuring a safe work environment for our members is a top priority. At the same time, educators are often the biggest advocates for their students, especially when students are from disadvantaged backgrounds. While we appreciate language to prioritize educator safety, we believe there are examples of first-time offenses covered in amendments in Section 10 that do not warrant an automatic expulsion. This could include low-level drug offenses or even a very young student who bites a school employee even with no malice. That student should not be permanently expelled. NSEA asked that language in Section 10, subsection 1 provide for a level of discretion. NSEA has long advocated the role of democratically elected school boards to bring the greatest levels of accountability and responsiveness to communities they serve. To that end, we believe school boards should be included in the review of student discipline practices. We ask that the Board of Trustees in Sections 4, 6, 9, and 10 not be stricken. Finally, the Respect Educators Act calls for the creation of a monitoring committee, including educators from across the state, legislators, restorative justice advocates, folks from the Department of Education, to gain a clear understanding of the impact of the laws, ensure consistent implementation, and secure protection for all students and educators. We would ask that in Section 15 of this bill, instead of just repealing the development of the statewide framework for restorative justice, we include the Restorative Justice Monitoring Committee that could be charged with monitoring the implementation of the statewide restorative justice framework and make recommendations to this legislature for improvements to the system. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Unfortunately, I think Mr. Daly took almost all the time. But no, we're going to go to you, but just make it really brief.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Laura Martin. I'm the Executive Director of the Progressive Leadership Alliance of Nevada, LAURA-MARTIN. I'm here to testify against Assembly Bill 330. I will just quickly go through things and not repeat what folks have said, but I do want to bring up on one of the more recent episodes of Nevada Newsmakers, a member of the Senate here at the legislature blamed school discipline problems on Tyrone Thompson. But we know the truth. The late Tyrone Thompson was an advocate for restorative justice, but unfortunately the implementation was underfunded and understaffed and also happened during a pandemic and really never had the chance of being successful. Additionally, Superintendent Jesus Jara's removal of effective discipline practices by demoting school deans, tracks with Governor Lombardo's failure as a sheriff of disbanding the gang unit, which he conceded led to an increase of homicides in Clark County. So maybe it's not the kids, maybe it's the adults. But we see today that Governor Lombardo's appearance today, that he is more than willing to be the conductor on Nevada's school to prison pipeline. And it seems to be a part of a tradition of dehumanizing black kids. And it's the same kids that the late Assemblyman Tyrone Thompson was trying to support in reaching their full potential and keeping them out of that school to prison pipeline. When wages are low, housing is scarce, and poverty grows, it's going to manifest in our kids. And the Nevada way has meant businesses first at all cost, and that cost has been the education of our students. So I will just close out by saying, do not call our kids savages, and that public education is not a privilege. It is a right. It is a great equalizer for all of our communities and what sets our country apart from others. And thank you all for hearing this bill and giving us the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. We are completely out of time. I know, Mr. Pirro, I'm sure you have brilliant things to say. Would you? I am cracked. And I'm sorry that we didn't get down to back to Vegas, but we have to move on. We also have another bill hearing as well, so I apologize. But you are welcome to submit your comments, and I will make sure that the committee gets those. So with that, we're going to close opposition, and we're going to open neutral. Is there anyone in neutral? And remember, neutral means not that you kind of like it and kind of don't. It's that you are completely neutral on the bill.
My name is John Ippolito. I'm with Protect Nevada Children. You can find 1,500 of us on Facebook at Protect Nevada Children. I do believe most of us could support this. There was a principal from Worcester High who spoke. There was a superintendent from Carson City Schools who spoke. There was Mary Przinski, the lobbyist for the superintendents. They all made great sense. And the problem with the bill probably is, what the teachers pointed out. I think the teachers make much more sense. And I think the first one was Assemblywoman Torres, LaRue Hatch. I think Anderson used to be a teacher. Teachers do not have enough control. I only taught for 6 years. Over those 6 years, I had 4 principals, and they were not consistent. A lot of times the principals aren't the ones that are there forever. You have to listen to the teachers. If the teachers had a little more support, paragraph 6, section 7, paragraph 6, if that was modified slightly, we would be in support of this bill.
I think we're going to have to put you down in opposition, and for the record, Assemblywoman Anderson is still a teacher. Okay. So is there anyone in Las Vegas in neutral? VPS, is there anyone on the phone lines in neutral?
Callers, if you would like to testify in neutral for AB 330, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Hello, legislators. This is John Carlo, the young gentleman from Southern Nevada, Las Vegas. Education should be nonpartisan. So I am for the best policy, and I thank those from the governor's office and those superintendents who came together to help educate the state. I don't believe the governor is smart enough to come up with this legislation by himself. It is true statistically that Governor Lombardo, while he was sheriff, did not make Las Vegas safer. So we shouldn't be listening solely to him. What I have seen this week is the large number.
If we could just have you speak to the bill and why you are in neutral.
Okay, so I'm in neutral. Well, for one thing, is the number of delinquent children that is being produced in CCSD. I don't think restorative justice practices is producing academically sound children. And we have heard a second grade teacher talk about how violent these children are. I don't think AB 330 goes far enough When I was a child.
Okay, sir, I'm
the
going to
best
have to,
principals I've had-
I'm going to have to stop this testimony. This is not neutral testimony, and we've already closed opposition. I apologize. BPS, are there any more callers in neutral?
Caller, you're unmuted on our end. Please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Jamie Tedrinsky. I am a teacher in the Clark County School District, and I am a career educator finishing up my 11th year in education. I am calling today to speak in neutrality for this bill because I believe that it is very important that we take the time to go back and revise and make sure that this bill serves to protect students. Sorry, am I still on?
Ma'am, are you done?
Hi, okay, I'm sorry.
I think we're having,
I'm sorry, I cut out a little bit.
okay. If you
Am
could,
I still on? I'm sorry.
okay, yes, briefly.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay. I think it's really important that we go back and we revise this bill. While it has good potential, there are still many elements of it that are problematic. I also find the fact that this is yet another unfunded mandate passed on to education to be an unwise decision. We're already seeing the lack of financial services provided to our districts and how it hurts students.
Okay, ma'am, I'm so sorry. I know it's a little nuanced, but neutral is really, we'll put you in opposition, but then we're going to have to move on. Okay. BPS, is there any more callers in neutral?
Chair, there are no more callers choosing to testify in neutral at this time.
Thank you. And I do understand it's very nuanced, the neutral position. So we'll continue to work on that. I'm sorry, Superintendent Ebert, Ms. McGill, would you like to come up to make any closing comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I thank everyone for the time and listening today. All of the input is very important. This, as noted by many of the speakers, a lot of work to be done to make sure our students are safe and thriving in an educational environment that we would expect for each and every one of our own children. So thank you very much.
Thank you for being here, Superintendent. Okay, with that, I will close the hearing on AB 330. I know we are going to lose some members. We do have a BDR introduction, but it's okay. All right, they're going to other committees. All right, so next we're going to do a bill draft introduction. I will introduce BDR 34-1088. This measure is sponsored by the Office of the Governor and revises provisions relating to education. Just remember that a vote to introduce a BDR requires a majority of the committee.
So moved.
Do I have a motion? I have a motion from the Vice Chair, a second from Assemblywoman Torres. Any discussion? All right, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? Motion carries. Okay, with that, we will now move on to our final bill presentation. Thank you for your patience, Assemblyman. We will open the hearing on Assembly Bill 274. This measure revises provisions governing required instruction in financial literacy. To present this measure, we have Assemblyman Nguyen, and you're lucky because I think we're all exhausted, so you're probably going to get off pretty easy. But I don't know, you're a freshman and it's first time in your committee, so maybe not. All right, please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is actually my second time. So, good afternoon, Chair Bill Bray, Axelrod, Vice Chair Taylor, and the most excellent Assembly Committee on Education. I had this presentation at 15 minutes. I'm cutting it down to 4, so this is going to help. My name is Yui Nguyen. I have the honor and privilege to represent District 8 in Southwest Las Vegas. Thank you for the opportunity to present AB 274 today. AB 274 is here to clarify the intent and the importance of codifying the world's financial literacy in statute, as well as ensuring some basic foundational steps are being taught in the curriculum as standardized by the Nevada Department of Education. Currently, Chapter 389.01A, Section 1 state the following subjects are designated as the core academic subject that must be taught in all public school: English language arts, mathematics, science, and social studies. Furthermore, Section 2 states that a pupil enrolled in a public high school must enroll in a minimum of 4 units in an English language art, 4 units of credit in mathematics, 3 units of science, and 3 units of social studies. Without limitation, 1/2 unit of American government, 2 units of credit in American history, world history, or geography, and 1/2 unit of credit in economics. And economics is the reason why I'm here today, to present in front of you the most excellent committee in education. It is not clear enough to promote excellence in our young adults entering the real world, and that's why AB 274 is here. According to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, economics is defined as a social science concerned chiefly with description and analysis of the production, distribution, and consumptions of goods and services. Okay. How does that help our young adults prepare for the real world when they are not learning the applicable ways to manage their money? The emphasis could be economics in the 30,000 feet level. However, the concentration and focus should be on financial literacy, everyday financial literacy. And that's what AB 274 is intending to do, adding the word financial literacy in the statute to be clear that it should be the focus. Why is that, you ask? Last year, I spent 6 months talking to the constituent of Assembly District 8, and amongst all the concern about our healthcare, jobs, safety, reproductive freedom, and of course education, most of the parents in my district are concerned about the lack of corroboration between what was taught in school and also reconfirm at home around dinner tables on the subject of financial literacy. Young adults are making financial decisions as they are leaving the care of their parents without any proper knowledge of the basic of household finances. For example, a first paycheck could earn $500 in gross wages. Most would think, hey, I have the entire $500 to spend. No, there are taxes, food costs, healthcare costs, transportation costs, and housing costs that, oh, wait, now they're responsible for. That could reduce discretionary income to little or zero remaining. All of a sudden, that $500 could turn into a negative balance, and they will resort to credit cards and predatory loan products that could set them back financially and enter the world of debts and financial insecurity at the beginning of their adulthood. Therefore, in Chapter 389.074 on the specific instruction of financial literacy, the development of personal financial plan, and now adding, without limitation, understanding and budgeting for the cost of housing, transportation, and healthcare, the basic of adult life. When we explain the basic and require a plan for the basic, then we can teach economics topics such as compound interest, investment, stocks and bond, and things that require at least the basic knowledge first before getting those higher level of understanding. And with your permission, Madam Chair, I would go on the amendment that was just submitted. I apologize for the tardiness of the amendment, but we missed a couple of words, so we resubmit. It is on your committee view, and I think the staff passed it out to all the members. And it's on their list as well. A conceptual amendment is to, on page 5, section 2, subsection 3, line 43, delete the word encourage and add the word require. And then following, adding a new A, students must complete a financial plan as part of their course requirement, and encourage change to A to B and B to C, on encouraging, continuing the current language of volunteers and business association, as well as other entities to help with the teaching of financial literacy. And then the second part that on the conceptual amendment is to make changes regarding the statewide Financial Literacy Council, basically transferring it from the statewide Financial Literacy Council to the Nevada Department of Education with the Office of Standards and Instructional Support so that they could closely align with the mission of the office, as well as transferring the expertise and keeping the same community members with diverse economic backgrounds, representation from the banking and credit union communities, 3 educators, 1 from elementary, 1 from middle, and 1 from high school, and of course the addition of 1 high school student. And that is it for my presentation. I would stand for a question.
Thank you very much for that concise presentation. Members who have any questions? Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch.
Thank you, and thank you for bringing this. So I am a social studies teacher, so this is obviously directly impacting what I teach. And when I looked at this bill, I reached out to social studies teachers, specifically economics teachers in Washoe County, and they said they are all teaching financial literacy in their economics, and so I support that clarity. My question comes from the amendment. I'm a little concerned that maybe things might be placed in the wrong section. For example, the section 2, subsection 3, adding the must complete a financial plan. That looks like what you're requiring for the course, which to me would be in section 2, sub 1. So I just think that might need to be placed somewhere else because subsection 3 is just talking about community partnerships, but doesn't talk about any other topics. So that hopefully could just be a quick correction. The other part is...
And just for the record, council said as long as we have the intent on the record, it's fine.
Okay. The only other thing is I'm concerned about changing encourage to require on subsection 3, and here's why. Because it's talking about getting community partners to come into your classroom, which I 100% support and our teachers support. I have a 6-period schedule, and we are a 3-day rotation, so if someone wants to come in, they have to come in for 2 whole days, all day long to meet all of my classes, and that is sometimes a struggle to get people to do that. I'm concerned that if we put require, then teachers who are making a good faith effort to bring people in may be penalized because they can't quite get people into their schedule.
Yui Win for the record, Madam Chair, through Assemblywoman. Thank you, Chair. And you are correct, and that's why this amendment, the latest one with the line with the word encourage bold, is the latest update. We did catch that when we draft the amendment. So the encourage is actually still there for the volunteers and for the organization. The requirement is only on the financial plan. Thank you.
Assemblywoman Torres.
Thank you. And thank you for bringing forth this legislation. Obviously, I think financial literacy is an important part of the curriculum. That's why it's already a part of the economics classes that are currently being provided. And we've passed similar legislation, I know for sure in 2019, but I think prior to that, we had looked at similar legislation too. And so I guess I do have concerns about adding language requiring a financial literacy plan to be developed in a course because it has never been common practice that the legislature legislates what educators must teach, but rather that the Department of Education would create the provide the guidance for the curriculum. So I'm just I guess I'm interested to understand, because I think that could create policies like unintended consequences in the future, where we have policies where we say English teachers must teach Romeo and Juliet, they must do this, and so something like this I think is I don't know that that's standard policy. I don't know if maybe legal can chime in if that's generally, if there has been any other instances where we have where we legislate the curriculum that is meant to be provided.
We'll have to get back to you on that.
Sorry.
It's okay. Is that it?
Yeah.
Any other questions? Vice Chair Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to my colleague, Assemblyman. When I am trying really hard to place on the amendments, kind of where it goes, and I can't seem to locate where it says page 6, subsection 2, because my page 6 doesn't look like that. So I'm really trying to find that piece, and I know that was one of the questions of Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch. I'm trying to see where that is, where that should be. Will you help me? Just help direct me to that, please.
Yes. Thank you. Yui Win, Assembly District 8. Assemblywoman Taylor, if you look at bottom of page 5, if you read number 3, it just says the Board of Trustee of each school district and the governing body. Did you see that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so of each charter school in which pupils are enrolled in any grades of grade 3 to 12 inclusive shall, and you see the word encourage?
Yep.
Now that word's being asked to change to require. And then we're going to add the new A, which continue on the next page. So the old A is person to volunteer time. That is now a B. So A will be inclusive shall require, and then A will be...
Yeah, that goes B, that goes to C.
Right. So B and C will still be encouraged. It's just now A is required.
Okay, so what threw me is when you said line 1, I thought the change was actually on line 1.
No.
It isn't.
And I'm sorry for that.
Oh, that's okay. I just wanted to make sure as I'm going through this, I have the rest of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Assemblywoman.
Thank you, Chair.
And our council can chime in on the question that was done by Assemblywoman Torres.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Asher Killian, Committee Counsel. So generally in law, we don't prohibit certain types of instruction, but there are some courses for which certain types of instruction is required. For example, NRS 39054 requires in American government classes that things such as the essentials of the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Nevada are included. There are similar provisions for inclusion of those things in American history classes, in instruction regarding the contributions to science, arts, and the humanities of Native Americans, Native American tribes, et cetera. So there are instances in NRS where particular items are required to be included in the instruction for certain courses.
Thank you for that clarification. Assemblywoman Anderson?
Thank you so much, and thank you for bringing the clarifying language. My concerns are from exactly what others have brought up about on page 5 and changing that word encourage to require. I want to make sure that I'm clear. Is this an every year item that this financial management or financial items wouldn't be required to be taught, or is this different timeframes with the grades 3 through 12?
Yui Nguyen, Assembly District 8, thank you for the question. Assemblywoman Anderson, the intent is to have the requirement done at least one time before they graduate. So it could be whichever time in their high school career this is being taught, that this part is the intent where they are required to do at least one financial plan, and just to, in terms of doing the research on this and speaking to different districts, I understand that some of the schools are already doing this as a standard, but this is just to make sure that every students in our entire state have the opportunity to create this plan.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for that conversation. I think I might need to have a little bit more of an offline conversation with you to get clarity about why exactly we're starting as low as 3rd grade, where sometimes the education around coins and everything is actually starting in first and kindergarten, and then as we grow up. So I'm just a little bit concerned about those grades that are being mentioned, so we can have that conversation offline.
Thank you. Assemblyman Moscow. I was wrong. They still have it in them. They must have had their caffeine or ate their Wheaties.
Thank you, Chair. Very quick question. Just for the record, what is an example of the plan, if you want to share what the intent is?
Yui Nguyen, Assembly District, for the record. Thank you for the question. I think going back to page 4, the original intent of AB 274 is that plan has to have the basic of understanding and budgeting the costs of housing, transportation, and healthcare, and food, which are the basics that the youth don't think about, that is now their responsibility once they hit the adult world. So having those understanding that, hey, you need to think about your basic first before you get into the fancy stuff, then it set them into a positive path rather than a negative path where they would use credit cards and other predatory lending products just to put into those fund that they don't actually have.
Any other questions, committee? Okay, with that, we will, oh, sorry, don't. Assemblywoman Torres.
Looking at the amendment has language around the Office of Standards and Instructional Support, and I don't really see that in like the bill as is. Is there any like place I can refer to where in the statute that is situated right now? What part of the bill?
Thank you. Ewing Wynn, Assembly District 8 for the record. Thank you, Assemblywoman Torres, for that question. I will get back to you on that. This was missing a chapter, so we will send that information to the chair and the committee members.
Okay, yeah, and I might want to take that conversation online because you didn't really hit on like why we're doing that or what we need, like if that's something that has been a request of OSIS or NDE. Can you comment on that?
Yes. Again, Ewing Wynn for the record. This is in consultation with the Office of Standards and Instructional Support. This is by working with them that we came out with this. I think the feedback is that the Financial Literacy Council right now is operating separately from this Office of Standard Instructional Support. And this is actually the members of this committee, this is actually their idea to transition this over to the office so that they can work closely with the Office of Standards and Instructional Supports to make things a lot more smooth.
Committee members, I know we're losing a couple members again for committees. Okay, now we will have you step back and I will open it up in support. And I see someone coming forward.
Good afternoon, Chair, committee members. For the record, Nick Vanderpool with Flynn Judici Government Affairs here today on behalf of Pay Active. On Nellis, you'll find a letter from Pay Active in support of Assembly Bill 274. Pay Active is a certified B Corp, public benefit company on a mission to help improve financial security and well-being. As a part of this, Pay Active offers free resources to support financial learning and counseling, as well as tools to help users budget and save. PayActive believes technology is an important tool in the toolbox to help users strengthen their financial literacy and are proud to offer these resources for free to all their users. PayActive supports this bill and the effort to increase financial literacy and learning for Nevada students. We thank Assemblyman Wynn for this legislation, and thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, Chair Bilberry Axelrod and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Nick Schneider, policy analyst for the Vegas Chamber. And just to make this as quick as possible for y'all, we're in support of AB 274. We believe that there is a unique opportunity here to help our upcoming generations excel and be prepared for their adult lives. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Matt Morris for the record on behalf of Daily Pay. We've also offered a statement in support that's been posted to Nellis. Daily Pay is an employer-integrated earned wage access provider that offers on-demand pay benefits to thousands of hardworking people in the state of Nevada. We're proud to submit this statement in support of AB 274, which would ensure that Nevada students have the opportunity to receive instruction in financial literacy. We want to thank Assemblyman Wynn and the bill sponsors for bringing this bill forward, and we thank the committee for your time. Thanks.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee and staff. My name is Rick McCann, Nevada Association of Public Safety Officers and a member of the Nevada Law Enforcement Coalition. First, I wish to thank Assemblyman Wynn and a whole host of bipartisan joint and co-sponsors, some of whom are sitting right on this dais here today. Why the heck am I here? Assemblyman Thomas just looking at me like, yeah, why in the hell are you here? I normally appear on law enforcement, labor matters, but most of my members, believe it or not, across the state, they're parents. They're parents of children in our school systems, and this bill, I believe, gives those students a leg up on the understanding of everyday basic requirements of their financial lives, something the statutes already require, but this is going to strengthen it, I bet. I know the current law does state that students be taught basic strategies for developing financial responsibility. That's what the law says now. But this bill strengthens that commitment, in my view, to our children by teaching them to develop a financial plan in their lives that includes an understanding and budgeting for the costs of housing, transportation, healthcare, and the like. What a concept. Teaching students these basic ideas of financial awareness might actually help them avoid predatory lenders. Well, I don't know, some student loan programs kind of come to mind that they're going to be dealing with as soon as they graduate. What a concept. Personally, I went to law school so I wouldn't have to do math or do economics. Some of you up there may understand why I'm saying that. So this would have been cool about 100 years ago when I was in school in Pennsylvania. You know, they've already said it. You've already said it. Some of you know it. It's a good bill. Work out the damn amendments. I don't care. But the bill, the concept, the process of what we're trying to teach these young children, these young people, young men, women, is important. And for that reason, we support this bill. Thank you.
So we know late in the day we get McCann unscripted. Please go ahead.
For the record, my name is Holden Leonard, and I am a member of Carson Montessori Student Legislative Team. We are in support of AB 274. In essence of time, I'm going to defer to my teammate, who is an expert on the financial literacy bill.
My name is Hank Brown. I'm a member of the Carson Montessori Student Legislative Team, for the record. I'm speaking today on behalf of our entire Carson Montessori Student Legislative Team in support of AB 274. There's no question that financial literacy is a must. No one can survive in today's super fast computerized world without knowing financial literacy. It is in everyday life. Interest rates, withholdings, credit cards, mortgages, insurance, auto loans, student loans, budgets, and even how to avoid getting scammed. Thank you, Assemblyman Wynn, for bringing this bill forward again, so it's not lost. But what is happening is that financial literacy is addressed in session after session. It needs just to be implemented. CMCS's student legislative team has worked on financial literacy bills from the start with Senator Joyce Woodhouse, who introduced SB 220. I'm a sibling of one of those workers, and I worked the last session on AB 19, which lumped 3 critical areas of curriculum, civics, financial literacy, and multicultural, into one bill. I'm lucky to be in a school that has an outstanding financial literacy curriculum. It is real-world, hands-on. It is wrapped into everyday classroom lessons, which is the way it should be implemented. The Department of Education, under Jane Maloney, I hope I said that right, just released a curriculum idea chart for April on financial literacy, and NDE has scheduled a training for April 15th for all educators. Please, don't let financial literacy miss another opportunity to be launched. And most of all, don't have your committee wait until 2024 for results. You have a student voice on it now, which is critical, so please, get it out and into the hands of educators immediately. Don't wait until the 83rd session. Thank you.
Thank you. Before you leave, can you guys tell me what grade you guys are in?
6th grade.
6th grade? Both of you are in 6th grade? Wow, I think you both have tremendous careers. And I mean, I kind of want to keep you here and ask what you think about interest rates and pending recession, if not, but we'll take that offline. Thank you for being here. Looks like we lost everyone in Vegas. Do we have anyone on the phone lines to speak in support?
Callers, if you would like to testify in support of AB 274, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon, Assembly. Again, this is Anna Binder. I did submit a written comment in support of this, but since I'm still here, I wanted to verbalize my support of this. As a mother of 6 children that are products of the Clark County School District, we were very blessed that our older children, right now, the older 4 children, were enrolled in schools that also invested a lot of time into teaching them financial literacy. So I successfully have a 19 and 20-year-old with over 750 credit scores, no debt. They're going to college for free, and they have figured out the world and how to make it work for them when it comes to their finances. I know that my same eighth grader this year was also taught how to start his own business. They had an entire class on entrepreneurship as well. And I am very happy to see this bill come forward, as sometimes I feel like it is site-based when it really should be statewide. So thank you again, and I really do support this.
Thank you. BPS, any other callers in support?
Hello, Chair and committee members. My name is Amy Koo, AMYKOO, and I'm the Acting Deputy Director at One API in Nevada. AB 274 is a simple way to provide our students with the life skills that they need to be successful in their lives after graduation. Financial literacy is often seen as something taught to youth by parents. However, Nevada is an incredibly diverse state with many intergenerational and immigrant families who may not be the most familiar with the institutional financial literacy. As the daughter of immigrants myself, I learned a lot of my financial planning from friends and through online resources, and a financial literacy class in high school would have helped me jumpstart planning financially for my future. This bill would address one of the suggestions made by the nation's report card on financial literacy for Nevada by creating a standalone class for financial literacy. We thank Assemblyman Nguyen for introducing this important legislation, and we urge the committee to support AB 274.
Thank you for the call. And just to be clear, there's no one in Vegas. I think everyone in Vegas who was here for the last committee has left. That's what I meant. Not that we lost everyone in Vegas. And then there's no one else here in Carson City that wishes. Okay. Just wanted to confirm that. We'll go to the next caller.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Cyrus, Cyrus. This is an awesome bill. I have been talking about this along with many other issues in my high school in Aliso Viejo, California, which was high ranking, that this needed to be sought. That a lot of people were getting these high grades, hoping to get a high paying job, and realizing that they don't even know how to work with finances, how money, budgeting, and everything else works. So, wow, you guys actually want to teach people something that actually matters. We have to teach people about the stock market, because I've been working with that for about 13 years, about when to buy, when to sell, what dividends, price-earnings ratio, the list goes on, about bonds, about real estate, when to buy, when to get in, mortgage rate, interest rate, the Federal Reserve. The financial pain that we've had for the last 15 years. It's not just the system, it's the people. Yes, you have the power to budget and balance everything. So please support this bill. I think it's very, very important because, look, you look at how many percent of Americans are going paycheck to paycheck. All these loans we have, student loans, credit card loans, the list goes on. Look at the polls. People are not doing very well financially. Why do you think people like Susie Orman and David Ramsey are so popular? A lot of this can definitely be avoided. And I think in these intense times, we really need it because the economic situation is very, very uncertain. Thank you so much for bringing this bill. Appreciate it. Yield my time.
Thank you. BPS, next caller.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair Bilberry Axelrod and committee members. For the record, my name is Shelby Swartz, and I'm the development manager at Battleborn Progress. I'm calling in support of AB 274, and I want to thank Assemblyman Nguyen for spearheading this critical measure. It's imperative that our children, who are the future of Nevada, have access to financial literacy in our schools. I cannot begin to tell you how many long conversations we've had on our staff about how much we all wished we were taught even a lick of financial literacy in school. Today, as independent adults, we often have questions about what's the difference between 401k plans, how home loans and mortgages work, how investments work, and how we wish we were taught how to do this stuff in school. On behalf of the young folks on our team, we urge you to support AB 274. Thank you.
Thank you. Next caller.
Chair, there are no more callers choosing to testify in support at this time.
Okay, and with that, we will close testimony in support and move to opposition. Is there anyone in Carson City in opposition? Not seeing anyone. Anyone in Las Vegas? Not seeing anyone. Is there anyone on the phone in opposition?
Callers, if you would like to testify in opposition to AB 274, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify in opposition at this time.
Thank you. And with that, we will close opposition and open it to neutral. Any neutral testimony? And we have someone coming up, and she's going to show us how neutral is done.
No pressure, hopefully. Patricia Haddad, Director of Government Relations for the Clark County School District. Currently, our economics courses include financial literacy. So the bill as initially drafted, no financial impact to the district. Based on the intent of the amendment, we believe that will maintain. We're just going to hold off and wait for that language to come through and then be able to continue to engage from there. But grateful to the Assemblyman for working with us on adjusting some of those amendments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? You did. Anyone on the phone lines in neutral?
Callers, if you would like to testify in neutral for AB 274, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify in neutral at this time.
Thank you. And with that, I will invite the Assemblyman back up for any closing remarks.
Thank you, Chair. Again, Chair Bilberry Axelrod, Vice Chair Taylor, and the most left behind excellent Assembly Committee on Education for the opportunity to present AB 274. Again, the majority component of this bill is requiring our students to learn the basic of being an adult, clarify the importance of economics in the basic topic of financial literacy. As we are preparing our young adults for the real world, and I'm so proud of these two young gentlemen who testified so well today. Outside of excellent in reading, writing, science, social studies, our K-12 student needs to understand the benefits of managing personal finances and setting themselves up for success along with their parents and their educators, the two groups that they trust most to guide them to success. Thank you for the opportunity to present this bill to all of you today, and thank you for your patience.
Thank you for your patience, as we got to quite late. With that, I will close the hearing on AB 274, and we'll now move on to our last agenda item, which is public comment. As a reminder, members of the public can provide public comment in person or by telephone, and can also submit public comment up to 24 hours after the meeting. So with that, please begin public comment. You have 2 minutes.
My name is John Ippolito, and I'm with Protect Nevada Children. I want to talk for just a minute about the free EdTech software and apps students are required to use for their education. By now, many people realize these vendors are paid with student data. Edmodo was one of the earliest and largest free EdTech vendors used in U.S. schools. Students could use Edmodo for all their subjects, plus it had a social media aspect built in. Edmodo had the most student data and information and the richest student profiles of any free EdTech vendor, and much more student data than TikTok will ever have on our children. In 2017, Edmodo had a data breach. Their data was placed for sale on the dark web. 2018, Edmodo was sold to the Chinese. The end of 2018, the FBI issued a public service announcement warning about EdTech vendors like Edmodo. 2020, the FBI said the Chinese are, quote, building a massive database on every American. 2022, the Chinese shut down Edmodo. Is there anyone in this room who thinks the Chinese deleted all the student data, information, and student profiles on U.S. students? Nobody. Here's one example of why this is very problematic. We know of at least 12 students who admissions to Harvard was rescinded because of stuff they posted on Facebook. What Facebook knew about these 12 18-year-olds pales in comparison to what the Chinese now know about U.S. students who used Edmodo for even a year. No one knows all the implications of of how all this student data and rich student profiles in the hands of the Chinese and all the other free ed tech vendors may affect the future of our children. Hopefully, you guys can do something about this. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your public comment.
Ma'am.
Anyone else in the room? And I don't see anyone in Las Vegas. BPS, do we have anyone on the phone line wishing to make public comment?
Callers, if you would like to provide public comment, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon, Assembly. It's Anna Binder one more time. I apologize because earlier I was getting upset and I lost my train of thought. But what I was trying to relay when I was discussing the removal of back in 2017, 252 of our children to out-of-state facilities, was that when you go forward and you look at the years moving out of that, and the 2022 data is there along with other years, but in 2021 and 2022, the state has been able to reduce that number to approximately 130 students per year. And I don't know if those are continued placements or new placements. The data doesn't really disaggregate that. But if restorative justice hasn't worked since 2017 or 2019, why are those numbers cut in half for the removal of our children to out-of-state mental health facilities? So that's where I was going with that, and I just wanted to finish that thought. Thank you again so much.
Thank you for your public comment. BPS, anyone else on the line?
Hi, this is Tracy Thomas, Thomas. I find it very concerning that no one, as of yet, in yesterday's meeting or today's meeting, has mentioned the correlation of the violence being committed by our students as being an extension of the violence that went unchecked during the summer of 2020. It extends beyond our school buildings because our schools have fostered criminal behavior by allowing it to occur unchecked. Students have become emboldened to extend this behavior to grocery stores and businesses during their lunch breaks and after school. Students are also entering businesses and abusing customers and employees within those businesses. When will our schools get back to enforcing the laws we already have regarding drugs, battery, assault, and truancy? When a student is violent and threatens safety, punitive measures are necessary. If there is a cascade of violence, that should be the concern, not the removal of that student, period. And I'd like to point out that hypocrisy demonstrated by several members of the committee giving lip service to a perceived bias as officers against students, when in fact that was exactly what they were displaying in full view towards the officers providing testimony. They were making assumptions about all officers based on their own biases. This makes it very challenging to give credence to much of anything they say in the matter of safety within our schools. As possible mentors to our youth, they are only reinforcing these misguided biases. Perhaps instead of wasting so much energy and crucifying our law enforcement, they should be doing what they can to reassure our youth that law enforcement is their friend and not their foe. Perhaps a better use of time would also be to focus on curriculum on our cultural similarities rather than our differences. Let us focus and expand upon what is going right within our schools. Highlight and recognize things that unite us rather than the lies that are dividing us. Help students to think for themselves instead of believing everything they are being told, including by the teachers. Thank you.
Thank you. BPS, any other callers?
Chair, there are no more callers choosing to provide public comment at this time.
Okay, with that, I guess we are done for the day. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, young men, for spending some of your spring break, I guess, right? Here in the building? Spring break for you? Oh, it's not spring break for you. This is your fun place. I was like that too, so I totally get it. Okay, with that, we will adjourn, and I will see you on Tuesday. Thank you very much. We are adjourned.